even a sane person. Here's an example. So this guy, his name is List, and List has a lot going for him. He has a good marriage, he has 3 kids, he lives in this huge 19-room mansion. I mean, look at that place. Plus, he's got a sweet job as vice president for a bank. So bro is doing well. But most importantly, he's very religious. Like he and his family go to church every week. So you know he's a good person. But one day, everything changes because boom, List suddenly gets laid off from his vice president job at the bank. And List, he doesn't know what to do. He can't tell anyone that he lost his good paying job. That would be humiliating. So he decides to not tell anyone. He doesn't tell his family, he doesn't tell his friends. Instead, he just keeps going. He wakes up every day, he gets dressed like he always does, and he tells his family that he's going to work. But instead, he drives to the train station and he just sits in his car and reads the newspaper until it's time to head home, so that his family thinks he's going to work and they don't ask him any questions. And List does this for a few months. He just fakes going to work. I guess he's hoping that during this period he'll find another gig to keep him afloat. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very good plan. Also, because he's not working, he obviously has no income coming in and his bills start stacking up, particularly his mortgage for that 19-room mansion he and his family are living in. So, after months of not working, he owes $11,000 on his mortgage. And this was 1971. So, today's dollars, he owes about 87 grand. That's a lot of money. So naturally, List starts freaking out. Like, what's he gonna do? Are he and his family gonna go bankrupt? Is he gonna have to go on welfare? And remember, he's still very religious. So List starts worrying that he's going to lose everything and that his family is going to get so poor that they're going to turn their backs on his religion and then his wife nor any of his kids will get into heaven. And so this is a big deal for List. Like he can't have his family not get into heaven. So he comes up with this insane plan to make sure his fam doesn't get so poor that they turn their back on his religion. Here's the plan. First, he tells everyone they're going on a big family trip, like a vacation, and he stops all the milk deliveries and newspaper deliveries to their home. Then, one afternoon, List is at home, and he gets a couple of pew-pews that he owns out of the garage, and he goes back in the house and up to his wife, and he points one of them at her, and blam, he unalives her. Then he goes upstairs where his mom is living, because I guess his mom lives in the mansion with him too, and blam, he unalives her as well. Then he goes downstairs to the kitchen and he waits for his kids to come home from school. Once they get home, he takes the pew-pews and blam, blam, he unalives them too. Then he sits down and he writes a 5-page handwritten letter to his pastor. And in the letter, he explains in detail that he had to unalive his whole family in order to save their souls and make sure they get into heaven. Also, in this letter, he acknowledges that, yeah, he lost his job and he could go on welfare. But then he says he'd have to move out of that 19-room mansion that he loves so much and live somewhere that he refers to as undesirable. So this is not just about saving his family's souls, it's also that he doesn't want to live in a smaller house. Anyway, then List goes to every family photo in the house and he rips his face out from them so that police won't be able to identify him from his photos. Then he leaves all the lights on in the mansion to make it look like people are still living there. And he packs up some of his stuff and he flees. And he travels by train from New Jersey over to Michigan and then all the way down to Colorado, and he starts living there. And weeks go by, and back in New Jersey, no one thinks much about List's family being gone. I mean, they were supposed to go on a family trip, so they would be gone. But then about a month goes by, and in the house, light bulbs start burning out and turning off one by one. And the neighbors notice, like, I don't think anyone lives there anymore. And so the neighbors end up calling the police. And police come over and they enter the mansion and they find List's family's bodies and the 5-page letter he wrote. So they know who did this. Except there's no trace of him. They don't know where he went. They have no photos to go by, so they basically have no leads. Meanwhile, List has been in Colorado, living a brand new life. He changed his identity, he changed his name, he calls himself Bob now. And Bob works different jobs, mostly in restaurant kitchens, keeping quiet, keeping a low profile. And eventually he ends up living in Denver. and he settles down there and he finds work and he joins a local church because, he's still very religious. And after about 5 years, Bob goes back to working in finance again. I guess he does bookkeeping for a carpet business or something. But that same year, he meets a nice woman at a church gathering, and he thinks she is fine. And they hit it off, and they start dating, and eventually they get married. Now, Bob obviously doesn't tell her or anyone else his real identity or that he murdered his last family. He keeps that a secret. But eventually, Bob and his wife, they move from Denver all the way over to Virginia. And there they settle down and they make a nice life for themselves. And at this point, it's been around 18 years since he unalived his other family. And it seems like the world has completely forgotten about the List murders. And dude is never gonna get caught. Until. All right, now some of you aren't from the US. Well, in the US, there's a long running TV show called America's Most Wanted. And on the show, they talk about criminals and people who are wanted by the feds for various crimes. Well, at this time, America's Most Wanted is brand new. It's in its first year, so everyone is watching it. And one night, boom, the show airs and they do a segment talking about these unsolved murders of this family that happened back in New Jersey 18 years before. And by this point, they figured out that the killer is List. They just don't know where he is. Now, despite him tearing himself out of all those family photos all those years ago, they actually did find some images of him. So they know what he used to look like. And on the TV show, they use those images and they get a forensic artist to make a bust of what List would look like now that he's aged almost 20 years. And this freaking bust they made, if you compare it to List, it looks almost exactly like him. Like, look at that. Like, that forensic artist nailed it. And so that night, there's this woman watching the show, and she actually used to be List's neighbor. So she sees this America's Most Wanted segment, and she's like, holy shit, that's Bob. That's my old neighbor. And so I guess she calls the police or America's Most Wanted hotline or whatever, and she reports that Bob might actually be this killer List. And about 2 weeks later, the FBI shows up to the accounting firm where Bob works, and bam, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. And of course, he continues to insist that, no, I didn't murder anyone. My name's Bob. And the feds are like, yeah, sure, List. That's bullshit. But eventually, he confesses and he's convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder, and he's sentenced to life in prison. And later, at 82 years old, List is in prison and he finally passes away from pneumonia. So, also, before he finally died, he said that he hopes to be reunited with his family in heaven. Good luck with that. So this guy, he's a liar, but his lies are about to make him rich. Let's call him Francis. And Francis is 16, he's from New York, and he can't stay out of trouble. He's always lying and stealing from his parents and stealing from local businesses. But then one day, he commits forgery, and he gets arrested. Here's his mugshot. And after he's bailed out, Francis goes on another crime spree, and he eventually steals a car and flees to California. And then a few weeks later, he's arrested there. And they send him back to New York where he has a bunch of outstanding warrants. And then, back in New York, Francis uses a bunch of forged checks to purchase an airline pilot's uniform. Because he thinks if he dresses like a pilot, which is a well-respected job, businesses will be more likely to trust him and cash his fake checks. But this plan doesn't really work, because he gets arrested for trying to use stolen checks, and he spends the next 2 years in prison. And by the time he gets out, he's 19. And a month later, he's arrested again in Boston for trying to steal a car and writing more bad checks. So they send him back to prison for another year. He's 20 now. So he eventually gets out and continues to be a turd. He gets that old pilot's uniform he bought and he uses it to scam a few free flights from the airlines. Because I guess off-duty pilots get free flights. But then he gets arrested in Baton Rouge for stealing a bunch of checks from a family who was trying to help him. And from there, he eventually flees to Europe. And there, he's right back to stealing cars and cashing fake checks in France and Sweden. And then he gets arrested in France and he's deported back to the US. He's 22 now. And now that he's back in the US, surprise, surprise, he goes right back to dressing up as a pilot and cashing more forged checks. 4 months later, he's caught and arrested again. And while he's in jail, he escapes. But within a few days, they catch him again trying to cash yet another forged check. And this time, he's sentenced to 12 years in prison. But a few years later, he gets out on parole. Then he's arrested again, this time for stealing art supplies and cameras from a children's summer camp. Here's his mugshot. And so at this point, Francis is around 26. And around this time, he moves into his parole officer's garage so his parole officer can keep an eye on him. And it's here that it finally seems like he's starting to learn his lesson. Until Francis is around 27 at this point, and he decides to start his own anti-fraud consulting company. And he starts holding these like crime prevention seminars where he gives speeches. So he gives these speeches and he tells everyone he's a reformed criminal. But he doesn't just tell people about all the check fraud and stealing from people and dressing up as a pilot to get free flights. No. Instead, he starts making up these fantastical stories about how from the age of 16 to 20, he had snuck into a hospital and had pretended to be a pediatrician for an entire year, and how he had pretended to be a lawyer for another whole year, and how he faked being a sociology professor at BYU for a few semesters, and that he stole $2.5 million from the airlines, and that the FBI had been chasing after him for years, and he made some kind of daring escape through an airline toilet. And all of these stories are bullshit. I mean, these aren't just small embellishments. These are things that he completely makes up. And we know this because during the age when he supposedly did all this stuff, he was locked up in prison, all of which is public record. The only thing he really did was write a bunch of bad checks, rip off a few of his friends, and scam a handful of free flights. But none of that ends up mattering, because when Francis tells these fantastical stories about how he faked being a pediatrician for a year, or a lawyer, or whatever, people are fascinated. They love hearing him say this stuff. And eventually, Francis's bullshit stories become so popular, he gets invited to do a guest appearance on a game show where he repeats these lies.
I worked there for a year as chief resident of a hospital.
And people watching just eat it up. They love him. After that, he gets invited onto the Today Show. Then he gets invited onto the Johnny Carson Show several times, where again, he repeats these lies.
How did you pass yourself as a pediatrician?
I supervised 7 interns on the midnight to 8 shift.
And these appearances on Johnny Carson really blow him up. Suddenly he's getting all kinds of media attention. People want to know more about him. So he teams up with an author and writes an autobiography. But not about his actual life, about these fake stories he made up. So then 2 years later, his book of made-up stories about his life gets published. And you've heard of it. It's called Catch Me If You Can. And it quickly becomes a New York Times bestseller. And then Francis sells the movie rights. And 17 years later, the rights end up at DreamWorks. And they make a movie directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. And the movie goes on to be a huge hit. And years after that, they adapt it into a Broadway musical. And this whole time, even after the success of the book and the movie, Francis is out there doing guest appearances and giving public speeches, telling these same made-up stories about his life to huge crowds.
I spent about a year practicing law. In both the job as the lawyer and the doctor, no one ever doubted for a second I was not.
And it wasn't until more recently, in the age of the internet, that journalists really start to dig in and fact-check him in a real way. And they track his whole life through interviews and public records, and they realize Francis isn't some brilliant impersonator. He's just a pathological liar. And to this day, he's still running his anti-fraud company, and he's still out there giving speeches. Shout out to Hollywood. This is Biggs, and Biggs is about to become famous for a really weird reason. Now, Biggs lives in England, and he's kind of a turd. He's been to prison a few times for like break-ins and stealing cars and stuff like that. But one day, he's out of prison, and he's living a clean life, and Biggs wants to buy a house for his wife and his 3 sons. Problem is, Biggs ain't got no money. He's broke. So he calls up an old friend of his, a guy who he met back in prison. This guy, Bruce. And he asked Bruce if he could maybe loan him some money. And Bruce is like, nah, bro, but I'm actually in the middle of organizing a train heist. And he offers to cut him in. And Biggs is like, all right. And so the plan is they're going to rob a Royal Mail train, which is a train that picks up and delivers mail. Now, one of the cars on that train carries high-value cargo, which is just lots and lots of bags of cash. Now, Bruce has a guy on the inside feeding him information about the train schedule and cargo. So he knows exactly when and where to stop this Royal Mail carrying all this And along with Bruce and Biggs, there are 13 other guys involved in this heist. So 15 total. But we're just going to focus on Bruce and Biggs. So Bruce and Biggs and 13 other guys, they put on ski masks and gloves and they are ready to go. And they don't have pew-pews because this is England. Instead, they just have some metal bars to beat people with. And so then the big day comes, and it's 3 a.m., and all the men go out to the train tracks and they hide. And when they hear the train approaching, a couple of them go to one of those track signals. It's kind of like a stoplight for trains. And they turn off a green track signal and they use batteries to turn on a red signal. And once the train approaches and it sees the red light, it starts to slow way down. And that's when, bam, all 15 men jump out from their hiding spot and they swarm the train and they get on board and then pow, one of them hits the conductor with the bar, nearly knocking him out. And then some of the other men board the car with all the cash in it and they force the train workers to lie down on the ground. And then eventually, when the train comes to a full stop, the 15 men, they start loading the bags of money into 2 Land Rovers they have parked nearby. Now, these guys steal 125 bags of cash. 2.6 million pounds, which today in US dollars would be worth about $35 million. So then they drive the Land Rovers over to this farmhouse in the country that some of them own so that they can hide out there and divide up the money. And over the next few days, they all take their cut of the money and they split and go their separate ways. Now, they have hired some people to come burn down the farmhouse after they leave to hide any evidence. But the people who they hired who were supposed to burn it down, they don't follow through with the plan for whatever reason. And then police end up finding the farmhouse and they get a bunch of the guy's fingerprints and eventually, bam, Biggs gets arrested. Here's his mugshot. And also Bruce and 12 of the other guys get arrested too. So Biggs gets sentenced to 30 years in prison for this. But his story's not over. Because while he's in prison, he decides, this place isn't for me. And so he makes a rope ladder, and one day he uses it to climb over the prison wall, and he escapes. So now he's on the run, and he flees from England all the way to Paris. And in Paris, he gets some plastic surgery, and he assumes a new identity. Then he moves his wife and family from Paris all the way to Australia. And from there, he and his family stay on the run. And they move like 3 different times, and Biggs changes his identity every time. But unfortunately, it's not enough. Because one night, Biggs sees on the local evening news that law enforcement believes he's living and hiding out in the area. And so then Biggs just like straight up ditches his wife and sons. And he gets on a passenger liner and he takes it from Melbourne all the way to Panama. And then from there, he flies to Brazil. And there, for about a year, he lives under the radar, working as a carpenter. Here's the thing about Brazil, though. At this time, Brazil has no extradition treaty with the United Kingdom. So Biggs can't get in trouble for his England crimes while he's living there. Lucky bastard. And at this point, he's been on the run for about 5 years. But he's having a great time in Brazil. He's partying every night, drinking at the clubs, and one night he meets an adult dancer at the club. And we'll just call her second wife, because she eventually becomes his second wife. And these two get married, and he gets her pregnant. Now, around this time, Scotland Yard shows up to Brazil, looking for Biggs. And they actually find him, and bam, they detain him. Here's his mugshot again. And so Scotland Yard tries to work with Brazilian police to deport Biggs back to England, but Brazilian police are like, nah, bro. A, because they don't have an extradition treaty with the United Kingdom, and B, because second wife is pregnant. And there's this whole other Brazilian law that says that you can't be extradited if you are a parent to a Brazilian child. So Biggs is free to go. However, his status as a known criminal means he's not allowed to work. So he's broke all over again. And everyone now knows he's an ex-con because his story has been all over the news. So then what does he do? He becomes a sort of local celebrity. And he starts charging local newspapers to do stories and interviews with him, and he becomes like sort of a tourist attraction. Like he's the convict who successfully robbed a train and escaped from prison. And so naturally people want to meet him and have him like sign autographs, and apparently he's selling mugs and t-shirts. So he starts making money this way. He even stars in a commercial for a Brazilian coffee company. Now, I couldn't find a copy of the commercial, but here's what he actually said in it. When you are on the run all the time, like me, you really appreciate a good cup of coffee. I'm not kidding. Those are his exact words. In fact, the dude is getting so famous that any celebrity that visits Rio de Janeiro during this time always has to stop and meet Biggs. Apparently, Rod Stewart stops by to meet him, and Sting stops by to meet him. The freaking Sex Pistols stop by and write a song with him, and they perform it and release it, and it becomes kind of a hit. But then shit gets crazy again, because one day he goes to a restaurant to meet a reporter for another interview. And while he's there, kapow, a couple of goons jump him, and they put him in a sack, and they put him on a boat, and they take him to Barbados. The kidnappers are, of course, hoping to get a reward from British police for capturing Biggs. But unfortunately for them, when their boat arrives in Barbados, Barbados is also like, sorry, bro, we also don't have an extradition treaty with the United Kingdom. And so they send Biggs back to Brazil, where he once again is a free man. And so Biggs, he lives his life as an escaped criminal for about 2 more decades before ultimately his health starts to deteriorate. So then finally he gives up and he surrenders and he flies back to England to get the good health care he needs. And as soon as his plane lands in England, bam, he's sent back to prison to finish his sentence. But at least he gets good health care. And then about 8 years later, they let him out, and a few years after that, he passes away. Dude lived a crazy life. This police officer is so bored with his job that on his lunch break, he's going to go rob a bank and then return to work as if nothing happened. Now, the guy, his name is Andre. And Andre is kind of a thrill seeker. And he's police captain at Kempton Park in South Africa. And unfortunately, he's not happy with his life. And he starts looking for a bigger thrill. And then one day, kaboom, he decides he's going to rob a bank. So he catches an early flight from Johannesburg to Durban, and there he rents a car, drives to a bank in town, puts on a wig and fake beard, and he walks into the bank, and he points his pew-pew at the teller, and he asks the teller, "Will you please fill this bag with cash?" Then he takes the cash and he leaves, and he catches the next flight back to Johannesburg. And so boom, the robbery is a success, and it's a thrill for Andre. So he decides to rob another bank, and another bank, and another bank. And soon enough, every time he gets a day off from work, he flies to Durban and robs another bank. He even starts robbing local banks in Johannesburg on his lunch break. Like he'll rob a bank and then later on that same day, he'll go back to the scene of the crime to investigate the robbery because he's the police. And he disguises himself so well, none of the witnesses ever recognize him. And he's really good at this bank robbery thing. He knows exactly how the bank security systems work, so he knows how to avoid getting caught every time. And this goes on for 3 years. Andre robs around 30 banks during this time, and this is a huge thrill for him. But then, one night, he screws up. So he's at this party one night, and he's getting a little tipsy. And he starts talking and having a conversation with his friend, this guy, Core. And Andre's bragging to Core that he's been robbing all these banks and that he's so good at it. Here's the thing about Core, though. Core just happens to work for the Bureau of State Security, which is kind of like the FBI. And Core feels like, because of his job, he just can't keep a secret like this. And eventually, he tells his supervisor. So the next time Andre flies back from Durban, having just robbed another bank, police are waiting for him at the baggage claim. And so, bam, they arrest him. And he's supposed to spend about 17 years in prison, but that's not going to happen because he's going to bust himself out. Now, while Andre's in prison, he meets this guy, McCall, and he meets this other guy, Hale, both of whom are in prison for robbery. And pretty quickly, they all three become friends. And after about 3 years in prison, Andre and McCall and Hale, they come up with this wild plan to bust them all out. First, Andre and McCall, the two of them, they fake injuries so that the prison guards will escort them to an outside physiotherapist for treatment. And then once they're at the physiotherapist, bam, they overpower the guards. And they grab the guards' pew-pews and then they steal the physiotherapist's car and they use it as a getaway vehicle. And then once they've escaped, they lay low for a while. 3 months later, they go back to where Hale is, guns a-blazing, and they bust him out too. So now the three of them are together, on the run, hiding out. And so what does Andre want to do? He wants to start robbing banks again. He wants that thrill back. So then kaboom, the three of them hit up a bank. And then kaboom, they hit up another bank. And then kaboom, they hit up a third bank. And these guys just keep going, robbing bank after bank after bank. And they always wear ridiculous disguises. Sunglasses, fake mustaches, fake beards. They almost look comical. But despite that, they're a good team. They can execute a full bank robbery in under 5 minutes. Sometimes they're able to rob 4 banks in the same day without getting caught. So, because of all this success, soon enough, word starts to get out. And the local people, they start hearing about this gang of bank robbers on the news. And strangely, a lot of the public are cheering them on because they're making the police look like fools. And it's funny to them. So Andre and McCall and Hale, they become like folk heroes. And people start calling them the Standard Gang, after Andre's last name. So this crime spree goes on for several months. The Standard Gang is hiding out at safe houses, hitting up banks when they can, collecting a lot of cash, and hanging out with lots and lots of escorts in their spare time. Now, before you start cheering these guys on too, just know that during this time on the run, Andre was known to approach random young women pretending to be a professional photographer. He would then lure them back to his hotel room, pretending he's going to take professional pictures of them, and then he would essay them. And at least 2 of these women end up reporting him to the police for this. And this will come up again later. So, eventually, the Standard Gang is named South Africa's Most Wanted. And their photos are suddenly everywhere. All over the media, everyone's talking about them. And the 3 guys know it's just a matter of time before they get caught. So they come up with a plan to flee the country. So first, they decide they're going to buy a small yacht. And they're going to leave the country that way. I guess it's supposed to be safer than all 3 of them flying commercial. So then Andre uses a fake passport. He flies to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And there, he's going to finish negotiations on the sale of this yacht. The next day, back in South Africa, police show up to one of the safe houses the gang had been hiding in. Apparently, police had been tipped off by some of the escorts the gang used to hang out with. So police are suddenly outside the safe house. And it's 5 a.m. and McCall is the only one home. And police are like, Standard Gang, come out with your hands up. And McCall, he's butt naked, because I guess he sleeps naked. And he gets his pew-pew, and he gets into a crazy butt-naked shootout with police. And they storm the place, and they're shooting at him, and he's running from room to room, shooting back. And then finally, once they have him cornered, he turns the pew-pew on himself, and he unalives himself. Meanwhile, there's Hale. As soon as Hale gets a tip that police are onto them, he bounces. He uses a fake passport and he hops on a flight to Greece. So he's long gone. While police, they raid all the gang's safe houses. And in one of those safe houses, they find photos of one of the women that Andre had essayed a few months back. And this not only confirms her story about being essayed, but it also confirms that this safe house belongs to him. And that safe house leads police to the yacht they bought. And that yacht leads them to a crew member they had hired to sail it. And that crew member tells them that Andre is supposed to deliver the yacht to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So now police know that Andre is in Florida. So then newspapers in Florida get word of this, and they start publishing Andre's picture in the paper. So now people in Florida are on high alert, looking for Andre. And so then, one morning, it all starts to fall apart for him. Because Andre is at a used car dealership, trying to get his car painted a different color because he had just stolen it. And there, the salesman recognizes him because his pictures had just been in the local paper. And that salesman doesn't say anything then, but he later calls the police. So then later that night, police show up to Andre's apartment and they surround it because they're about to bust in. But Andre is actually not home. However, crazy enough, one of the officers just happens to spot him riding by on a bicycle. And the officer knows it's him, so he runs over and he confronts him. And so then Andre realizes what's going on, and he jumps off his bike and he makes a run for it. And then the officer chases after him and he catches up to him. And Andre stops and he pretends he's going to give up, and then he grabs the officer's shotgun. And then thinking quickly, the officer pulls out his other pew-pew, and then bang, he shoots Andre 4 times. And he unalives him. Here's what Andre looked like in real life. So then that only leaves Hale. So Hale, he ultimately ends up in London. And there he tries to commit another robbery, and he ultimately gets caught. And they throw him in prison for almost 20 years. Later, he does his time and he gets out. And he becomes a better person and he starts public speaking. And he actually dedicates himself to educating people about the horrible consequences of living a life of crime.
The major regret actually is the fact that I've wasted talents and abilities and I have achieved nothing.
That's wild. Shout out to South Africa. So this woman hates this other woman, and she's about to try to ruin her life by planting illegal substances in her car. So the story actually starts with this woman, Kelly. And Kelly is a volunteer at the local elementary school. She's PTA president, and everyone likes her. But one day, after school, she's at the school, she's volunteering, watching the kids, and one of the kids, this kid, Luke, he's late when lining up with the other students. And he accidentally ends up getting locked out of the school. And Luke gets upset and he starts crying, and he's locked out for around 5 to 8 minutes before eventually someone notices and they let him in. But then this woman shows up, Jill Easter. And Jill Easter is Luke's mom. And she is pissed that Luke accidentally got locked outside. So she goes up to Kelly and she lets her have it. She's screaming and she's yelling and calling her negligent. How could you leave my child locked outside for 5 whole minutes? So Kelly apologizes to Jill Easter and she tells her that Luke was locked out because he didn't line up fast enough and that he was probably slow in getting to the door. And Jill Easter hears this and she thinks Kelly is calling her son mentally slow. So Jill Easter just loses it. She can't let Kelly get away with this. And that is when she starts plotting her revenge. So the next day, Jill Easter shows up to the school to talk to the principal. And she explains what had happened the day before. And she demands that they fire Kelly from her volunteer job. So the school admins investigate and they see that Kelly did nothing wrong, so they don't fire her. And of course, this just pisses Jill Easter off even more. So she goes and prints flyers that warn people about what a horrible person Kelly is and that she should be fired. And then she stands out in front of the school and passes them out to parents. But still, the school doesn't fire Kelly. Then Jill Easter goes and complains to the superintendent, and Kelly still doesn't get fired. Then Jill Easter goes and complains to one of the state boards of California, and Kelly still doesn't get fired. And Jill Easter, she isn't going to let this slide. She's had enough. She is going to get her revenge one way or another. So she goes and files a police report, including a restraining order, claiming that Kelly is harassing her son and stalking her, and that somehow Kelly tried to unalive her. And since Jill Easter has no proof of any of this, because she's making it all up, the restraining order is ultimately denied. Oh, but she's not done. She then goes and gets her husband, this guy, Kent Easter, who is a high-powered attorney. She gets him to file a civil lawsuit against Kelly. And this lawsuit claims that because Kelly left her son locked outside for 5 minutes, he had been the victim of false imprisonment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And of course, that lawsuit, it goes nowhere. But understandably, all of this conflict is just stressing Kelly out. And she doesn't know what she's going to do. But then, suddenly, bam, Jill Easter goes silent. No more drama, no more lawsuits, nothing. And months go by, and Kelly has heard nothing more from the Easters. And it seems like all of this harassment has finally stopped. Until almost a year has passed since Luke got locked outside the school for 5 minutes. And then one night, a man makes a phone call to police, and he tells them that he saw Kelly driving dangerously.
I was calling because my daughter's a student at Plaza Vista Elementary School, and I'm concerned one of the parent volunteers there may be
And this man also tells them that he saw Kelly driving to the school while on drugs. So police, they go to the school to investigate because that's where she is. She's there volunteering. And they pull Kelly aside and they tell her about the report they got. And they ask her if they can search her car. And Kelly's like, sure, I have nothing to hide. So police go and they open up her car and they search. And guess what they find? A whole lot of drugs. And this shocks everyone. And of course, the police, they start to grill Kelly. They get her to do a curbside sobriety test, like where they make you walk the straight line and stuff. And by the way, all this isn't happening in private. No. This is all happening right in the school parking lot, in front of all the students and parents and teachers who are all watching. And poor Kelly is horrified. Like her job is on the line. Well, luckily, Kelly passes the sobriety test because she's sober. And police, they start to believe maybe Kelly isn't high. Maybe someone planted those drugs in her car. So detectives, they get on it and they start investigating who made that call to police. And they track that call to this nearby hotel. And there they check surveillance footage and that's where they see Kent Easter on the screen walking into the hotel. And this is just right before that phone call to police was made. So then detectives get a hold of their phone tracking records and they see that Kent Easter's phone was near Kelly's apartment complex the night before a bunch of drugs just randomly appeared in Kelly's car. Meaning he found out where she lives, snuck over to her apartment complex in the middle of the night, planted drugs in her car, and called the police on her the next day to make it so that she got busted in front of the whole school, hoping to get her fired. But here's where the story gets really crazy. After all this, detectives, they start surveilling the Easters. And then one day, they see a strange man leaving the Easters' home. This man, Gomez. So they pull Gomez over and they question him. And it turns out he's a firefighter who had been smashing with Jill Easter. They were having an affair behind Kent Easter's back. So detectives ask Gomez to wear wire and then meet up with Jill. And surprisingly, Gomez cooperates and he agrees to do this. So then he meets up with her at a local park, and Gomez doesn't end up getting much information out of her, but he does end up telling her that they should stop seeing each other until the heat on her dies down. And Jill Easter doesn't like this idea one bit, and she flips out and she starts yelling at him and screaming and she breaks up with him. And then after that, she randomly starts showing up to his home where his wife is, and she starts confronting his wife, telling her all about the affair that they've been having for the last 2 years. She prints out photos that Gomez had sent to her, and she leaves them in his mailbox for his wife to find. She also sends emails to his wife's work, trying to give the wife's co-workers all the details about her and Gomez's affair. And those emails sometimes include intimate photos that she and Gomez had taken. It's a whole mess. But Jill Easter wants as many people as possible to know that Gomez has been cheating on his wife and that he's a bad person. She's basically doing everything she can to ruin his reputation. And I'm starting to see a pattern here. Anyway, eventually police arrest Jill Easter and Kent Easter for conspiring to plant drugs in Kelly's car. And here's her mugshot, and here's his. And Jill Easter pleads guilty, and she's sentenced to 120 days in jail, and she's disbarred from ever practicing law again. Did I forget to mention she's a lawyer? Well, not anymore. She got disbarred. Well, Kent Easter gets sentenced to 180 days in jail, and his legal license is suspended. And ultimately, the Easters end up getting a divorce. Womp womp. Couldn't have happened to a nicer couple. Meanwhile, Kelly sues them in civil court, and she's awarded $5.7 million as compensation. I gotta say, $5.7 million for going through this hell, that sounds like it was worth it. Get that money, girl. Good for her. Shout out to Irvine, California. So this woman, she's losing her eyesight, and she'll do anything to get it back. So one day, she hears about this famous spiritual faith healer in Brazil, and she thinks maybe he can heal her eyes. So she travels to Brazil with some friends, and they get there, and she meets this faith healer, and she has a session with him, and he has her sit down in a chair, and he tilts her head back, and then he pulls out a scalpel, and he starts cutting right into her eye. Now the woman, let's call her mother-in-law, because she's my actual mother-in-law, but we'll get to her in a second. First, let's talk about the faith healer. So the faith healer, his name's John of God, And this dude claims that his god or whoever will heal people through him if he does his hocus pocus and touches them. Of course, he has no formal training in medicine. He's never been to med school. In fact, he dropped out of elementary school in the 2nd grade. But regardless, he considers himself a healer. And one day, he just decides to travel around Brazil and tell people, hey, look, I can heal you. And people fall for it. In fact, they're really into it. And over time, he slowly builds a following. And his following becomes so big that he eventually builds a spiritual healing center in the middle of this small town to accommodate all of his visitors. And there, John of God becomes known for performing what he calls psychic surgeries, which is exactly what it sounds like. He uses no anesthesia, no sterilization, and he does these medical techniques on people that just don't make any damn sense. Like he shoves surgical forceps up people's noses to heal them, or he'll scrape the white with a scalpel in order to heal them. It's weird. Like someone will come in with back pain and he'll be like, let's scrape your eye with a scalpel. That'll heal you. But anyway, he claims this works. He claims that he's cured people's cancer. He claims that he's healed multiple sclerosis. He claims that he's helped people walk who couldn't previously walk. And while he's doing all this, he allegedly doesn't take any payment for all these healings. But he does, of course, accept donations. And he sells things to his followers, like special healing pills that are just placebo. And he also sells, and I'm not making this up, bottled holy water. And so by doing all this, John is starting to get really popular in Brazil. In fact, he gets so popular that ABC notices and they do a 1-hour special on him. And they treat him not as if he's a con man, which he is, but they treat him as if he's actually healing people. And specifically on this special, they interview a woman named Lisa Melman. And Lisa Melman, on this show, she gets on camera and she loudly declares that she has breast cancer, but that she's going to quit all her chemo and all her traditional cancer treatment, and instead she is only going to let John of God treat her. I don't know, I guess he's going to stick forceps up her nose and that's going to cure her breast cancer. Oh, but it gets worse. A few years later, after the ABC special, someone very influential learns about John of God. Oprah. And Oprah decides she's going to investigate and she's going to see herself if any of this is real. So she travels to Brazil and she spends a bunch of time with him. And she dedicates several episodes of her very popular TV show to praising him and his work and all these people he's allegedly healed. She even has Lisa Melman come on one of those episodes. And miraculously, Lisa claims that her breast cancer is now gone. She says her sessions with John of God cured her. And Oprah and her audience, they applaud this. But then, 2 years later, sadly, Lisa Melman dies. It turns out her breast cancer hadn't actually been cured. She just thought it had because that's what John of God told her. In fact, when she stopped her treatment, her cancer got progressively worse, and she was apparently in a lot of pain when she died. Of course, Oprah never gets on TV and mentions that part. Regardless, the damage has already been done. Oprah has endorsed John of God on her show twice and exposed him to an international audience. And from there, his business just explodes. People are flying in from all over the world trying to get healed by him. At this point, at his spiritual healing center, he's healing over 10,000 people a month. And he's making bank. He's getting tons of donations. He's selling trinkets and bottled holy water and those placebo pills left and right. And he's making more money than he's ever made. Allegedly, he's making over $14 million a year just on those pills alone. But then, in a weird twist, at some point, John of God gets diagnosed with stomach cancer himself. And so does he use his magical spiritual healing powers to heal his stomach cancer? No, of course not. He goes to a regular ass doctor and he gets normal treatment and he gets surgery in a normal hospital. And he does 5 months of chemo like anyone else who would have stomach cancer. And of course, he recovers in like a year. And then he initially denies to everyone that that happened, because I guess him using traditional medicine is bad for his business. So anyway, my mother-in-law hears about this guy and she wants to travel to Brazil to see him. See, my mother-in-law, she has an eye disorder called macular degeneration. And unfortunately, every year she loses more and more of her vision. And she's lost most of it at this point. And she feels like, hey, maybe this John of God guy can help bring her eyesight back. And she's not dumb, she's not gullible, she's just desperate for a cure. So she comes to me and my wife and she tells us that she's going to Brazil. And me and my wife were like, oh, please don't. You know, we're worried about what could happen to you. And this guy is obviously a fraud and a turd for telling people he can heal them. But unfortunately, she doesn't listen to us. She'll do anything to fix her eyes. So she goes to Brazil and she meets him. And she has a session with him and he sits her down in a chair and he tilts her head back or whatever. And he pulls out a scalpel and he does the thing where he scrapes the white of her eye with that scalpel. He then has her put a cover over that eye. And he tells her that in a few days, she can take that cover off and her vision will be healed. Somehow, in both eyes. Meanwhile, me and my wife are there in the US and we're just waiting to see that when that cover comes off, if her vision is actually healed. Now, this is where the story goes off the rails. You aren't ready for this. Around this same time, a Dutch woman named Sahira, she's struggling with some mental trauma. And she sees this guy on Oprah's TV show, this guy named John of God, who claims he can heal people. So she's like, hey, maybe he can help heal my mental trauma. So she flies to Brazil and she shows up to the spiritual healing center and she waits in line and she sees him a couple of different times. One of those times she sees him, something exciting happens. John of God offers her a private consultation and she's super excited. So she waits until everyone's gone and then he invites her into his office. And while she's there, he takes her into the bathroom and he makes her hand touch him inappropriately. And afterwards, she's like, that was weird. And like, I don't know, maybe that's just part of the healing process. So she goes back later for another private session with him. And this time, when they're alone, he takes her into the bathroom again and he straight up essays her, like with a hard R. And here's the thing, the mental trauma that Sahira went to see him for was specifically sexual trauma. So she went to see him and told him about her sexual trauma, and his response was to essay her. And so poor Zahira doesn't know what to do, and she feels violated and sick to her stomach, and she wants to tell someone, but at the same time, she believes this man is actually healing so many people. So she decides to not tell anyone, and she buries it deep down with all her other sexual trauma. Until 4 years later, the Me Too movement happens, and Zahira finally finds out she's not alone. So she posts about her experience with John of God on Facebook. And then she gets invited onto a Brazilian TV show to talk about it. And there, on that show, she meets a dozen other women, all who say that John of God essayed them too. And this TV show airs, and suddenly all of Brazil knows about these accusations, and everyone's talking about it. And bam, more women come forward. And so in response, the public prosecutor's office for the state, they're getting tons of accusations from a lot of different women. So they set up a hotline and an email address specifically to receive all of these accusations that they're getting about John of God. And in the first day that hotline goes live, nearly 200 women come forward saying John of God essayed them. And then in the weeks that follow, even more women come forward. And eventually, that number of women who claim that John of God essayed them is over 600. And of course, John of God denies this. He claims that all 600 of these women are lying. But then his own daughter comes forward, and she claims that he had essayed her too. From when she was the age of 9 to 14, he would tell her that he was healing her, but instead he would essay her. And she said that he finally stopped essaying her when she was 14, because that's when she got pregnant by another man. And when he found out that she was pregnant by another man, he beat her so hard that she lost the baby. In fact, his daughter said, and I quote, "My father is a monster." So anyway, all of this becomes public. And police are like, all right, it's time to get him. And they issue an arrest warrant for him. But John of God, he ain't going out easy. He immediately withdraws $9 million from his various bank accounts. And he goes on the run, and no one can find him. He's just hiding out somewhere, like he is gone. But about a week later, I guess the pressure is just too much for him. Like he knows he's fucked. And he turns himself in. And they throw him in jail. Here's his mugshot. And eventually he goes to trial, he's found guilty, and he's sentenced to a grand total of 489 years in prison. Good for him. And okay, so at this point, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Ray, did he do anything horrible like that with your mother-in-law while she was there? First of all, let me just say, none of that essay stuff was public when she went to visit. So none of us knew what had been going on. And while she was there, lucky for her, she said she met him in a room full of people. There were no private sessions. So no, nothing inappropriate happened with her. But it's also worth noting that she eventually took her eye cover off. And so, did John of God end up healing her eyesight? No, he did not. Shocker. Shout out to Brazil.
Babe, let's go for a run. Huh? Nivea Sunshine Control. No white cast, non-sticky, and prevents premature aging.
Babe, let's go for a run. Again.
Again? Nivea Sun is for skin. Enjoy the sun.
So this little kid, he might be one of the best con artists I've ever seen. Let me show you. Now his name is Juan Carlos, and he lives in Colombia, and so far he's had a really hard life. But Juan Carlos is about to do whatever it takes to succeed. So one day he sets out to make that happen, and he heads to the local airport to catch a flight to Miami. But little Juan Carlos, he can't afford a plane ticket. So he sneaks onto the tarmac and he climbs onto a cargo plane. And he hides out in the wheel well. And he allegedly holds on real tight while the plane takes off and flies 3.5 hours from Cali, Colombia to Miami, Florida. Then the plane lands, and allegedly Juan Carlos falls out of the wheel well. And he just lays there on the tarmac, unconscious. And airport staff, they eventually find him. And he's shivering, and he's disoriented, and he's just a wreck. But he tells them not that his name is Juan Carlos, but that his name is Guillermo, and that he's 13 and from Colombia, and that his parents had died, and that he doesn't have anyone else, so he fled to America. And his story just blows people away because they feel sorry for him. And so the local media, they start covering it. Then a police officer in the area, this guy, Lozano, he's driving home one day and he hears the story on the radio that they found this 13-year-old kid who had been hiding in the wheel well of a plane. And Lozano is so moved, he goes and he volunteers to be Juan Carlos's temporary guardian while the state figures out what to do with him. So Juan Carlos goes and he lives with Lozano and his family. And this changes his life. Suddenly, he's not living in poverty anymore. And this middle-class lifestyle feels like wealth to him. And they've got all these nice things, and so he tells himself that soon he's gonna have nice things too. And within a few weeks of living with Lozano's family, Juan Carlos starts stealing, and things around the house go missing. Plus, he's been disappearing for days at a time. And Lozano and his wife, they start thinking that something isn't adding up about this kid. Then, one day, they get a call, and it's the Colombian consulate, who had just gotten some important information. Turns out, Juan Carlos isn't actually named Guillermo. He's named Juan Carlos. And he isn't some innocent kid. He's actually got a criminal record. And he isn't 13. He's actually 17. And his parents aren't dead. They're actually alive and well back in Colombia. And he probably didn't ride in the wheel well of that plane. It's more likely that he rode inside the plane with the cargo. And he just lied about it all because it made a better story. So Juan Carlos is just a little con artist, trying to con his way into the United States so that he can have a better life. And so, bam, they immediately detain him, and they deport him back to Colombia. Oh, but this isn't over for Juan Carlos, because for a moment, he got a taste of a much better life, and he'll do anything to get that back. So, over the years, Juan Carlos tries his best to scam his way out of Colombia and get back into the US and other countries using different aliases and fake IDs, but he ends up getting deported, like a bunch of different times. And while all this is going on, Juan Carlos, he's there developing the perfect con. Here's his perfect con. Juan Carlos dresses up real nice, pretending to be a rich man, and he goes into a 5-star hotel, and he tries to make it look like he's a guest there. He hangs out in the lobby and at the hotel bar. He'll chat with the staff a little bit just to make sure that they notice him. And as he's doing this, he also takes note of other guests. He'll memorize their name, he'll memorize their room number, then he'll go to reception, pretending to be that guest. and he'll say that he lost his room key. And reception, they'll recognize him like, oh, this guy, he's been hanging out in the lobby for a few days. Of course he's a guest here. So the hotel will let him in the room. And while he's there, he'll steal money and credit cards and jewelry and whatever he can get out of the guest luggage. Then, to make it worse, he'll then call the hotel security desk and tell them he's locked out of his safe. And security, they'll come up to the room and they'll open the safe for him. And they don't question anything because he's already in the room. So of course they think it's his room. So then Juan Carlos takes everything from the safe and he leaves the hotel, a slightly richer man. And this con works. In fact, it works really well for him. So Juan Carlos does it repeatedly, hotel after hotel after hotel, just raking it in. Until one day in London, boom, he gets arrested for using a credit card he had stolen. But Juan Carlos, he's ready for this. He's been thinking about it a while, and he gives police a fake name and he skips bail and leaves town. And then a year later, he's back in London, pulling off his same con, and then bam, he gets arrested again for using another stolen credit card. This time, he gives them a different fake name and a fake ID, and he ends up getting off with a small fine because they don't realize he's the same guy they arrested the year before. So Juan Carlos continues with this pattern. He travels the world using fake names, fake IDs, and robbing hotels. But a few years later, he makes his way back to London again, and there he hits 4 more hotels and leaves with over $100,000 worth of cash and jewelry. Now, at this point, a couple of London detectives have started to take notice. This detective, Swindells, and this other detective, Plowman. So Swindells and Plowman, they've started to piece a lot of this together, and they end up connecting a bunch of these robberies back to the thief, Juan Carlos. Meanwhile, old Juan Carlos, he's already fled. He's living the good life. He's got money, he's got clothes, he finally has nice things like he's always wanted. But it's just not enough. So Juan Carlos keeps going. And within a couple of years, he ends up in Las Vegas, where he pulls off his infamous scam and he ends up stealing $350,000 worth of cash and jewelry. And one of the hotel rooms he robs is allegedly Celine Dion's room. So that's fun. And then about a year later, Juan Carlos is back in London again. And he hits up even more hotels. But then, one night, Swindells, he's out, and he's walking back from a bar he was just at. And he just happens to stop outside of a supermarket. And he sees a man leaving that supermarket. A man wearing a long leather jacket. And Swindells recognizes him because by sheer fucking coincidence, he just crossed paths with the Juan Carlos. Now, Swindells has never seen Juan Carlos in person, only in mugshots. But he's been working on this case a long time. He knows it's him. So then, pow, Swindells arrests him, and he goes to trial, and he's sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. Oh, but this story isn't over, because Juan Carlos really likes his nice things. So 3 months later, he's in prison, and he happens to have a dentist appointment. And he ends up charming the prison guards to let him go out to his dentist appointment alone. I guess this is some kind of like open prison where they're not as strict. And so they just let him go to the dentist alone. And of course, he flees. And from there, somehow, he makes his way to Dublin, where he steals a credit card and pulls his infamous scam in yet another hotel. And that is where he screws up, because that puts this Irish detective on the case. This guy, McGlynn. Now, McGlynn, he goes and he looks at CCTV footage from some of the stores that Juan Carlos had used that stolen credit card at. And pretty quickly, he identifies the thief in the footage. He knows it's Juan Carlos, the same guy who had walked out of prison not too long before. So McGlynn investigates further, and he concludes that Juan Carlos must have just gotten to Dublin. So he's likely staying in a cheap hostel in the city where he can keep a low profile. So McGlynn spends 2 days searching all these hostels in Dublin. And then he finally finds Juan Carlos hiding out in a hostel with tons of items he had already stolen. And so kapow, he gets arrested again. Here's one of his mugshots. And he gets sentenced to 2 years in prison, but then an Irish judge rules that he can be extradited to France to face even more charges there, because he robbed a bunch of hotels there too. But then, while he's there in France, he's released temporarily, and then just like that, Juan Carlos disappears again. A few years later, he's busted by a customs agent at a gas station in Vermont. after he had entered the US illegally. And he's sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. And after that, he gets out and he's arrested again in a hotel in Hong Kong. Then he's arrested in France again for robbing another hotel, over $200,000 worth of cash and jewelry. And from there, he's sentenced to prison again for 15 months. This dude is allergic to freedom. But now he's out, and his current whereabouts are actually unknown. But I'm just going to take a wild guess and say he's probably still out there robbing more hotel rooms. So shout out to Colombia, London, Miami, Dublin, Las Vegas, France, Hong Kong, and Vermont. So this teenage kid, he commits so many crimes that he's about to run from police for years, steal a plane, and escape to another country. Now his name's Colton, and he's only 12, and his life sucks. He lives in a small trailer in the woods on a little island off the coast of Washington. And his mom is an addict, and so he mostly has to take care of himself. So he spends most of his days in the woods, alone, reading about airplanes, because one day he wants to be a pilot. Now, eventually, he starts breaking into neighboring houses, stealing things, mostly food, but over time, he starts stealing other things, a laptop and credit cards. And interestingly, he often doesn't wear shoes for some reason. Like, he does most of this barefoot. And so this barefoot kid is always in and out of trouble. And one day, he doesn't show up for a mandatory court date, and bam, the police start looking for him. And Colton learns they're looking for him, and so he hides out in the woods for like 6 months. He finds vacation homes, and he breaks into those, and he sleeps there. Or he'll steal food and camping supplies, and he'll sleep out in the forest. But then, eventually, boom, police catch him. And they convict him, and he's sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention. And of course, Colton hates being locked up. He can't ever be a pilot while he's in detention. So a little over a year later, he sneaks out an unlocked window and he escapes. So now he's on the run again, and he goes back to the area where he used to live, and he starts sleeping in the woods and breaking into vacation homes again. So he's constantly on the move and stealing things like food and supplies and cars. And this goes on for months before finally police close in on him. One day he's driving a Mercedes he had stolen, and they spot him because he's driving like an asshole, and they go to pull him over in a parking lot, and he jumps out of the car while it's still moving, and he takes off and runs into the woods. And so police search the car, and they find a backpack he had stolen and a digital camera he had stolen, and on that camera they find this selfie he took. Then Colton steals a boat, and he drives it from his island to a different island. And on the new island, he breaks into all kinds of homes and businesses again, and he steals a bunch more shit. So this guy's been in and out of trouble for years at this point. He's like 16 or 17 years old at this time. And if you're like, Ray, how could a teenager cause this much chaos? Like, wouldn't he want friends or like a girlfriend? What exactly is Colton getting out of all of this? Well, let me just say that this kid never had a chance at a normal life. Starting from when he was a little kid, his upbringing messed him up. And I'm not trying to invoke sympathy for him. I'm just saying that the home life he grew up in, the environment he grew up in, was an absolute disaster. When he was a toddler, his dad was a drug addict. So he was raised mostly by his mom, who was apparently a raging alcoholic and was extremely neglectful to him. His neighbors later said they called Child Protective Services more than once because they believed that he was being abused or neglected. Child Protective Services actually showed up to his place 12 different times. One of those times, they actually even removed him from the home for a period of time. So yeah, all of this set his life up for an eventual disaster. That's why he was living in the woods and running around barefoot for so long as a kid. I mean, what else was he supposed to do? Anyway, so Colton is still out there, and he's still on the run from police. And by now, his story is starting to catch on in the media. I mean, this teenage burglar who police can't seem to catch, and he's starting to get a little reputation. But Colton, he isn't too worried about that. He's way too preoccupied with his lifelong dream of becoming a pilot. And during this time, he decides he's gonna make that happen. So he goes and he breaks into a small airplane hangar, and he steals a single propeller plane, and he manages to get it running, and he actually gets it in the air. Now, he has no formal flight training, only reading piloting manuals and watching instructional videos on his computer that he had stolen, but he somehow managed to get this plane flying. and he keeps it in the air for 3.5 hours before he finally crashes it on a Native American reservation in mainland Washington. About a year later, he steals another plane, but this one he only flies it about 10 miles before he lands it correctly this time. No crashes. 2 weeks later, he breaks into another hangar and steals a third plane in Idaho. And he flies it 250 miles back to Washington, and this one he crash lands in a field. Meanwhile, the legend of Colton and his crimes are growing. I mean, he's 17 now, and he's been on the run from police for like years. And he's stealing boats and planes, and they just can't seem to catch him. So he's starting to get fans online. And because he often doesn't wear shoes, they call him the Barefoot Bandit. Someone even starts a Facebook fan page for him, and that fan page gets over 100,000 followers. While one company starts making t-shirts with Colton's face on them. People are even writing songs about him and putting them on YouTube. The dude is blowing up. And of course, all this sudden attention, it starts to put a lot of heat on him. And by now, the FBI is involved in this manhunt, looking for him. But Colton, he's like, whatever. He's still out there robbing houses and stealing cars. And so another year passes. And he decides, okay, there's too much heat on me. It's time to steal another plane and get the hell out of the country. But first, he has to find the right plane. So he jacks a boat and he drives it to mainland Oregon. And from there, he goes to a small airport and he doesn't find the plane he wants. So then he just steals a car. And from there, he goes to 2 more airports and he still doesn't find the right plane. Then he tries an airport in South Dakota and nope, still doesn't find the right plane. Then he just keeps on stealing car after car, hopping from state to state, breaking into airport after airport, looking for the right one that has the plane he wants. And after driving over 2,000 miles through 9 different states and almost a dozen stolen cars, Colton hits up a small airport in Indiana and he finally finds the plane he's looking for, the Cessna 400. And bam, he straight up jacks it and he takes off and he's in the air and he flies 11 hours over 1,200 miles from Indiana to Great Abaco Island in the Bahamas. And once he's there, he kind of crash lands in shallow waters near the shore. That crash landing triggers the plane's emergency locator beacon, which is how the FBI ultimately learns that Colton is now in the Bahamas. But Colton has no idea because within hours, he's breaking into local houses and businesses again and stealing cash and food and all kinds of stuff. Then he steals another boat and he flees to the nearby island of Eureka, where he hopes to blend in with the constant crowd of tourists there. But unfortunately for Colton, he can't blend into the crowd. He's just too famous now. And within a few days, locals start to recognize him as the Barefoot Bandit. And they tip off local police. So pretty quickly, Colton finds himself in yet another stolen boat, speeding away as Bahamian police chase him in like a Miami Vice type boat chase. And as he's hauling ass and getting away, kaboom, he high centers his boat on a sandbar. He is stuck. And as he's trying to unstick his ride, of course, police roll right up on him. And they open fire on his boat, taking out his engine. And there is where Colton, the Barefoot Bandit, finally surrenders. So then, bam, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. And Colton gets charged with all kinds of stuff, and ultimately he gets sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. Oh, but here's the best part. Apparently Colton's story is so interesting, he's able to sell the movie rights to his life to 20th Century Fox for a whopping $1.3 million. But unfortunately, as part of the punishment for all his crimes, the court ordered that he's not allowed to profit from his story. So he doesn't get to keep any of that money. All of it has to go to pay back his victims, the people he stole from. And apparently he's out of prison now, he served his time, and he just works a regular job. So good for him. So this guy, his name's John. And John is about to die in the scariest way I can think of. Prepare to have nightmares. Now, John, he's 26, he's a smart dude, he's about to start med school. But one day, John and his younger brother, who we'll call little brother, John, little brother, and a bunch of their friends, they all decide to go spelunking, or cave exploring. They want to explore this local cave that people explore all the time. So they all drive over to this cave. and they find the entrance, and it's not like one of those big caves you'd see in a cartoon. It's a little guy that you pretty much have to crawl into. So soon, John and little brother and like 9 of their friends, they descend into this little cave entrance, and they make their way into the open area. And they're crawling around and they're exploring and they're having a good time. And then about an hour later, they're still at it. And John and little brother and a couple of their friends, they decide to check out this area called the birth canal, which is a long, narrow tunnel that you'd have to crawl through. And that tunnel eventually opens up into a bigger area. So they explore deeper into this cave, and John crawls through the narrow tunnel part of the birth canal. And this passageway is really pretty tight. And as he crawls deeper into it, it gets tighter and tighter. But no matter how narrow this tunnel gets, John, he keeps pushing forward because he knows the larger area of the birth canal is coming up. But then, like out of nowhere, suddenly the tunnel takes a sharp downturn. And bam, he slides down into an even smaller tunnel. And then kaboom, he's stuck. Because John was never in the birth canal. He actually took a wrong turn and ended up in a dead-end tunnel, and now he can't get out. So John immediately tries not to panic, but his arms are pinned in such a way that he can't use them. And to make it worse, he's upside down. So all the blood is quickly rushing to his head. Here, let me show you a diagram I found of how he was stuck. Like, look at that. Imagine being stuck like that. Like, that is nightmare fuel. So John is scared and he yells out for help. And little brother, he catches up to him and he sees John's feet kind of sticking out of the crevice. And he tries with all his force to pull him out. But unfortunately, he can't get any leverage because he's in a narrow tunnel too. So pretty quickly, little brother crawls back out of the cave and he calls 911. And he's like, "Come quick, my brother is stuck upside down in a cave." And 4 hours later, the rescue team starts to arrive. And it took a while because it's late at night and this cave is way out there. Now, the first to arrive on the scene is this woman, Susie. And she's small, but she's an experienced spelunker. So she crawls into the cave and she gets to John pretty quickly. And she's like, "We're going to get you out of here." So Susie ties a rope around John's ankles and she tries to pull him out. But she immediately realizes there is no way she can do this on her own. So they bring the rope outside to the entrance of the cave, where there's room for multiple people to pull it. So they all grab the rope and they pull, but the rope keeps getting caught on the rocks and it's just not working and they can't get him out. And even more time passes. And by this time, a whole ass rescue team has showed up. And they put their heads together and they decide the only way to get John out is to set up a legit rope and pulley system, which means they're going to have to drill into the walls of the tunnel. So they start drilling into the walls of this tunnel. But this process is excruciatingly slow. Not to mention, it's humid as fuck in that cave. So after a couple of hours of them drilling, Susie, who is the closest to John, she can't do it anymore. She has to tap out. So then another rescuer steps in. This guy, Ryan. So now Ryan's in the cave closest to John, and he's basically just looking at John's feet. And he and John talk and have conversations for like hours as they wait for the team to set up this pulley system. Meanwhile, John's wife, this woman, Emily, she's back at her in-laws' house. And they've been informed that all this is going on. And she's just there waiting on this phone call of someone saying John is okay and he's out of the cave. But unfortunately, that call doesn't come. So then the next morning, she and some other family members, they head over to the cave site and they get there. And by this time, there's over 100 people there, all working to get John out, and they still can't do it. And the rescue workers, they like set up a two-way radio system so that Emily can talk to John, and they talk and they tell each other that they love each other and whatnot. And it's a nice moment. But then even more time passes. And at this point, John has been in there upside down for 19 hours. And the pulley system is finally ready. So Ryan secures the rope around John. And Susie and 7 others on the ground outside, they count down and they start pulling. And they pull and they pull and they pull as hard as they can. And suddenly, John starts to slowly rise out of the dark. And they pull again and again and again. And by the 4th pull, John lifts out of the crevice. He's almost out until suddenly, kaboom, a small arch in the cave crumbles. And one of those metal rings snaps forward and hits Ryan in the face so hard that it knocks him unconscious. And John immediately falls back down into the crevice. And shortly after, when Ryan regains consciousness, he's bleeding and his jaw is broken. So he has to leave the cave and go get medical attention. And so Ryan's dad comes in and takes over that spot. And then Ryan's dad ends up getting stuck in part of the tunnel. But luckily, it's only for a while, and he's eventually able to get himself out. And this whole time, while they're trying to get him out, the worst is happening to John. His breathing starts to get more and more shallow. And little by little, he gets less and less responsive. Being upside down in that position for so long is putting strain on his heart. Okay, let me explain to you why this is so dangerous for John. Because I know you're probably thinking, Ray, so what if he's upside down? Was it going to make him dizzy? Is it going to give him a headache? No, it is much worse than that. Your body is designed to function and pump blood right side up. That's what it's always done its whole life. It is accustomed to dealing with gravity in only one direction. So when you go upside down for a long period of time, gravity causes blood to rush toward your head, which will cause your heart to work harder to pump all that blood against gravity, which is going to greatly increase the stress on your cardiovascular system. The human heart can actually deal with this kind of stress for a long period of time. I mean, hours, I'm sure, but eventually it's going to give out. Not to mention, all of those organs in your lower abdomen are now sitting above your lungs, meaning they can push down and put weight on your lungs, making it much harder for you to breathe. And if this sounds like torture to you, that's because it is. Literally, many cultures in the past used to hang people upside down as a form of torture. It's called inverted hanging because a normal hanging generally unalives you instantly, but an inverted hanging is a long, painful way to die. Anyway, the rescue team keeps trying, and they drill even more holes to re-rig the pulley system so they can give it another shot. But that's taken a long time, and everyone's working their ass off to make this happen. But then, just before midnight, John has become completely unresponsive, and they have a paramedic crawl into the cave to check his vitals, and the paramedic determines that, sadly, John has passed away. He had been trapped upside down for over 27 hours until he died of cardiac arrest. And here's what John looked like in real life. And the worst part is, John is so deep in that cave that they can't retrieve his body. So they just have to leave him there permanently. And ultimately, they close that cave to the public forever and they seal it shut. And eventually, they put a bronze plaque where the entrance of the cave used to be, a plaque that memorializes John and is a reminder of probably the worst way to die. So one day, this guy's at work, and we'll just call him Digit. And Digit is operating a mechanical truck lift when suddenly his glove gets caught in the lift and he pulls and he struggles to pull it out. And that is when the machine comes down and slices his finger clean off. All right, but we'll get back to him. This story doesn't actually start with Digit. It starts with this woman, Ayala. And one night, Ayala is eating at Wendy's, and she's eating chili. And she takes a bite, and she suddenly bites down onto something crunchy. And she spits it out, and she looks at it, and it appears to be a human finger. And Ayala freaks the hell out. She starts yelling and telling everyone in the restaurant to stop eating because the food is contaminated. And she's screaming at the staff and accusing them of tampering with the food. And the store, it immediately shuts down. And they discard the chili, but they save the finger. They actually put it in the freezer. And then they call the police, and the police come investigate. But they're like, this is more of a health code violation. This isn't really police jurisdiction. But then 3 hours later, the story has already hit the local news. And then the news starts to spread. And then the next day, corporate representatives show up to the restaurant. Now, I don't know what Wendy's corporate representatives look like, so I'm just going to represent them like this. So Wendy's corporate, they show up to the restaurant investigating, because this is a PR nightmare for them. And they're immediately trying to figure out if what Ayala bit into is an actual human finger. It is. And they're trying to figure out whose finger it is. So they interview all the employees at the store, they contact suppliers at the factories, but none of them are missing a finger. And within a week of this happening, Wendy's worst nightmare occurs. This story starts to blow up. It's all over the news, late night talk show hosts are making jokes about it. Ayala gets invited onto Good Morning America to talk about what happened, and she eventually goes and she gets a lawyer and she files a lawsuit against Wendy's because she's about to catch a big paycheck from this. Meanwhile, Wendy's is still trying to get to the bottom of this. They hire a forensics expert to test whether or not the finger was cooked with the chili or if it was added after the fact, and they determine it was added after the fact. They also find that there's actually no trace of Ayala's saliva on the finger, meaning she never bit into it. She lied. So Wendy's has all this information, and they're like, this has got to be a hoax. So they contact the police with this new evidence. And then finally, police get involved, and they start investigating. And to assist this investigation, Wendy sets up a free hotline and offers a $50,000 reward for any information leading to the actual owner of the finger. And sure enough, people start calling in, giving them information. And within a week, they get over 300 calls, with people making all kinds of wild claims. But one of those callers claims that they had done business with Ayala before and that she was involved in some kind of real estate fraud years ago. So police hear this and they really start digging into Ayala's past. Now, during all this, Ayala's still out there doing the media interviews, just enjoying the publicity, soaking up the attention. But slowly, after a honeymoon period in the spotlight, rumors about her start to surface. Like that all the evidence isn't really lining up with her story, and that she has a history of filing lawsuits against big companies. In fact, it comes out that she had filed 13 different lawsuits in the past against Goodyear Tires and El Pollo Loco and against General Motors. And then little by little, the media starts to turn on her, questioning her story. And this gets stressful for Ayala because almost 2 weeks later, bam, she suddenly drops her lawsuit, saying the pressure of being in the public spotlight is just too much for her. And she immediately stops doing all these interviews. But by this time, Wendy's has had so much bad press from this, and sales are starting to slip, and they're losing revenue because people think there's going to be fingers in their food. In fact, at this point, Wendy claims they're losing over $1 million a day from this scandal. So Wendy's is like, no, we're getting to the bottom of this. We need to clear our name. Then, around that time, out of nowhere, boom, police arrest Ayala. But not for the finger chili hoax. It's for the real estate fraud that police were tipped off about on the Wendy's hotline. And police also arrest Ayala's husband, this guy, Jamie, because during that same investigation, they discovered that Jamie owed over $400,000 in back child support. Damn. And of course, Wendy's is super happy about this, but they still need to figure out whose finger was in the chili so that they can clear their name and so that people will start eating at Wendy's again. So they go and they increase that $50,000 reward to $100,000. And that is where someone finally calls in with a lead. This guy, Mike. Now, Mike owns an asphalt business, and one day he calls into the hotline and tells them a story about how a while back, one of his employees had lost a finger. It had gotten caught in a truck lift and it was severed off. That employee is Digit. And about a month after he lost his finger, Digit brought that severed finger to work to show it off to the other employees. Like, hey, look at my finger. And one of the other employees who worked there at the time was Jamie, Ayala's husband. So Jamie offers to buy Digit's severed finger from him for like $100. I'm not making that up. And Digit agrees. And then Jamie and Ayala, of course, then use this finger to pull off the Wendy's finger chili scam. So police don't have to arrest Jamie and Ayala because they'd already been arrested, but here's her mugshot and here's his. And they charge them with felony attempted grand larceny, and she ends up pleading guilty and she gets sentenced to 9 years in prison, while Jamie must have been the mastermind because he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. And they're both ordered to pay $21.2 million in restitution to Wendy's. And the harshest punishment they got, both of them are banned from Wendy's for life. Wendy doesn't fuck around. So this guy, his name's Jerome, and Jerome is about to steal $24 million from McDonald's? So Jerome, he used to be a cop, but now he's a director of security at a marketing firm. And one day, the marketing firm he works for comes up with a promotion for one of its biggest clients, McDonald's. And in this promotion, they combine McDonald's and Monopoly into a game where customers win free French fries or free drinks, or the grand prize, $1 million. And this game blows up. Like, it is massively popular. And Jerome, as director of security, he's in charge of transporting those winning game pieces from the company to the factory. And this is a very secure process. The pieces are locked up in a case in envelopes with tamper-sealed tape on them. And they have an auditor shadow Jerome around anytime he has the case. And the auditor's always looking over his shoulder. Like when he travels with the case, the auditor has to sit next to him on the plane. McDonald's is hardcore. But then one day, Jerome figures out how to steal one of the winning game pieces, worth $25,000. Now, Jerome, he can't cash this piece in himself because he works for McDonald's. It looks suspicious. So he gives it to his stepbrother to cash in to see if anyone at corporate notices the piece is missing. And surprise, surprise, no one does. So his plan works flawlessly. So of course, Jerome's like, dope, I'm gonna do it again. And he starts stealing more of these winning game pieces and he starts selling them to people he knows. And he makes a little cash on the side doing this. And this scam goes on for several years. But then one day, something crazy happens. Jerome is chilling at home and a package is delivered. And he opens it up and he sees like a roll of tape. The same tamper-safe tape they used to seal up the envelopes with the winning game pieces. I guess the supplier had accidentally mailed the tape to Jerome's house instead of the McDonald's factory. So Jerome sees this and he immediately sees an opportunity to make even more money. So then boom, sometime later he's at the airport and he's transporting the case with the winning pieces in it. And the auditor, she's there with him. And so Jerome tells her he needs to use the restroom. And then he takes the case in there with him. And then he gets one of the envelopes, he breaks the seal, he pockets the winning game pieces and replaces them with losing game pieces. Then he seals the envelope back up with the tape he got. He then later sells those winning pieces to more people he knows. And they all cash in. So much so that after a while, Jerome starts telling those people to resell those pieces to people in other states to make it all harder to track back to Jerome. And with this strategy, Jerome starts stealing more and more pieces, and he distributes them out to more and more people in his network to sell. And at some point, he even brings on a couple of recruiters, and they help him get his winning tickets out to people across the country. And his network just keeps getting bigger. He even jacks some of the $1 million prize pieces. One of them, Jerome anonymously donates to St. Jude's Children's Hospital because I guess he feels bad about all the stealing he's doing. I don't know, but Jerome's scheme is working, and he and his friends are getting paid. Until eventually, McDonald's starts getting suspicious because a lot of these prize winners are strangely clustered around the Georgia-Florida area when people should be winning all across the country. Plus, here's the biggest problem with this scam. With a system like this, the more people you involve, the more people know about the scheme. And one day, one of those people, not sure who, they hit up the FBI. And they're like, I heard about a guy running a McDonald's monopoly scheme. And this helps the FBI connect the dots back to Jerome. So McDonald's execs, they find out about this and they want to shut the game down. But the FBI convinces them to run the promotion one last time. And this time, they wiretap Jerome and the other suspects' phones. Then, when the suspects all go to cash in their stolen game pieces, McDonald's tells them there's been a delay in sending the prize money. This delay forces all the suspects to wait on getting paid. And while they're waiting, they get paranoid and they panic. And they start contacting each other on the phone and they complain about how they never received their prize money from McDonald's and how the stolen game pieces aren't working. And since their phones are tapped, all of these conversations are used to incriminate them. So the FBI arrests Jerome, here's his mugshot, and they uncover his whole fraud scheme. And when all is said and done, over 50 people are convicted for scamming McDonald's out of $24 million worth of winning game pieces. Now, Jerome, he actually ends up snitching on his employer, the marketing firm he worked for, because separately from all this, the firm was rigging the Monopoly game too in a different way. And that's a whole other story. But because he snitched, Jerome only got 37 months in prison. And of course, they seized all his assets. So shout out to the Hamburglar, I guess. So this woman has her own daughter kidnapped, hoping that she can collect some reward money. Now, her name's Karen, and Karen lives with her boyfriend, this guy, Craig. But one day, Karen discovers that Craig has been secretly looking at some content on the internet that suggests that he might be a P3DO. And Karen is shocked and disgusted, and she's like, okay, I gotta leave this guy. But there's a problem. Karen can't just leave. She can't afford to support her family on her own. She's on welfare and she's got 7 children. But then one day, all that changes. when Karen allegedly sees a news update, and it's about a child who's gone missing in Portugal, and they're offering a big reward for that child's return. And Karen has no idea where that kid is, but this gives her a crazy idea. And there she comes up with what I can only refer to as the worst plan ever. Karen plans to hide one of her kids, and then she's going to tell everyone the kid is missing. And then authorities or whoever will offer a big reward for her kid's return. And from there, she'll have someone pretend to find the kid and collect the reward money. And then she and that person will split that reward money. And once she gets that big reward money check, then she'll be able to afford to take all her children and leave Craig, the alleged P3DO. Like I said, worst plan ever. Regardless, Karen definitely needs help pulling off this scheme. So she reaches out to the shadiest guy she knows. This guy, who we'll call Uncle Mike, because Uncle Mike just happens to be Craig's uncle. Anyway, she reaches out to Uncle Mike and explains her plan, and that she needs him to be the fake kidnapper. And Uncle Mike's like, right, I can do that. Then Karen chooses her most photogenic kid, her daughter, Shannon. Shannon is 9, so they're all set. And the next day, Karen and Uncle Mike set their plan into motion. So it's a normal day, and poor Shannon, she's walking home from school. And as she's walking, Uncle Mike, out of nowhere, just pulls up next to her in his car. And he gets out, and then bam, he shoves Shannon in the car. And then he gets in, and he speeds away back to his apartment. And there is where he imprisons her. He sedates her so she won't make noise, and he tethers her to a beam in the ceiling with like a leash so that she can't leave the apartment. It's awful. Meanwhile, Karen calls police and reports Shannon missing. And pretty quickly, everyone scrambles to find this 9-year-old girl. Police are looking, the whole neighborhood launches a full-on search, and they're canvassing her face on posters, banners, t-shirts. And this story is all over the news. And Karen, in all her audacity, goes on TV and pleads for Shannon to be found.
Shannon, if you're out there, please, darling, come home. I love you so much. Me and your dad, your brothers.
And so weeks go by, and police still have no real leads. It's almost like Shannon just vanished into thin air. Until one day, Uncle Mike gets a call from one of his relatives who's like, hey, I just got interviewed by the police about that missing kid. Did they call you? And Uncle Mike's like, no, and I'd like to keep it that way. And when relative hangs up, he's like, well, that was strange. So he immediately calls the police and tells them about it. And police get suspicious. They want to talk to Uncle Mike. So they go to Uncle Mike's apartment and they knock on his door, but no one answers. But Uncle Mike's neighbors are like, he's definitely in there. We've been hearing some strange noises from that flat, isn't it? So police are like, all right. And then boom, they just bust Uncle Mike's door down and they rush inside and they search the whole apartment, but they don't find anything. Then they hear a little girl's voice and it says, stop it, you're scaring me. So they follow the voice and they look in a hidden compartment under the bed. And there, finally, after being missing for 24 whole days, they find Shannon there, hidden with Uncle Mike. So they arrest Uncle Mike, here's his mugshot, and he totally just snitches on Karen. So then they go arrest her too, here's her mugshot, and then Uncle Mike blames Karen for all this, and Karen blames Uncle Mike for all this. Yeah, they both seem like really solid people. But anyway, both of them are sentenced to 8 years in prison. Meanwhile, while police are searching Karen's apartment looking for evidence against her, they find images on Craig's computer that confirm that he's a P3DO. So they arrest him too. And here's his mugshot. Not a bad ending. And all this happened in West Yorkshire, England, so shout out to England. So this girl, let's call her V. And V's an average girl, she's in junior high school, and one day she starts dating this other guy from her high school. And he's a nice boy, he likes her, let's call him HSBF. So V and HSBF date for a while, and it goes pretty well. And eventually, their relationship ends. Naturally, no hard feelings. And they both move on with their lives. So then fast forward to several decades later, V is all grown up, she's living a normal suburban life, she's married, she's a mom, and she starts dealing with some health issues. And these issues don't run in her family. So one day, she decides to take one of those at-home 23andMe DNA tests, because she wants to learn more about her health history. So she takes the test and she sends it away, and 3 to 4 weeks go by, and then she finally gets her results. And the results, let's just say she learned a lot, but not about her health history. The results show that V's dad is not her biological dad. So V immediately goes to her mom and she confronts her. And her mom confirms that yes, back in the 80s, they used a fertility clinic to get pregnant, which V already knew this part. But she always thought her dad, the man who helped raise her, she thought her dad was the donor. Like their parents had both used the fertility clinic to help get the mom pregnant. And mom is like, no, that is not the case. Your dad's sauce wasn't working, so we opted to use an anonymous donor. Some anonymous Yale med student, some random guy who just donated his sauce. And yeah, it sucks that V had to find out this way, but at least she now knows the truth and there'll be no more surprises when it comes to her family history. Until V gets a message on her 23andMe account. And it's from someone who is allegedly one of her half-siblings. Because these websites, they show you who your half-siblings are. This half-sibling writes her and says that they know who their real biological father is. The original sperm donor, the alleged Yale medical student. And spoiler alert, it isn't a Yale med student. Their biological father, the donor, is this guy. Dr. Caldwell. And Dr. Caldwell was V's mom's fertility doctor. Apparently, he would tell his patients that he was using the special sauce from anonymous donors, but he was actually secretly fertilizing these women with his own sauce without their consent. Oh, but it gets much worse. Caldwell didn't just do this with V's mom and her other half-sibling's mom. No. Caldwell did this to a lot of women. So V discovers she has 22 other half-siblings out there that they know about so far. Now, this story might sound familiar to you because I did a similar story like a few months ago. But trust me, this is not the same story. The ending to this one is a lot worse. So a year later, one night V is out to dinner with some friends. And her friends are like, hey V, what's new? And V just launches into this story. I took a DNA test and I found out my biological father's actually my mom's fertility doctor and I have like 24 half-siblings now. And her friends are like captivated on the edge of their seat. All except for one friend. That friend V went to high school with. That friend is HSBF. And HSBF is like, my parents went to a fertility clinic back in the 80s too. So HSBF goes home and he does one of those 23andMe DNA tests himself. And then he sends it off and he waits for the results. A few months later, V is packing up to go on a summer vacation with her family. And she unexpectedly gets a text. And it's from HSBF. And that text is a screenshot of his DNA test results, along with a message that says, you are my sister. Oh, but here's the worst part. Not only did V and HSBF date in high school, they smashed. So V accidentally smashed with her half-brother. Anyway, now some of the half-siblings are actually suing Dr. Caldwell, but it's going to be hard for him to face any justice because he's in his 80s now, he retired his medical license over a decade ago, and most importantly, because as of right now, the state of Connecticut doesn't actually have any laws against fertility fraud. Who would have thought this crazy shit was so common? Anyway, shout out to Connecticut. So this woman, let's call her Bull. And Bull has a big problem. She's dead. She's in the middle of getting heart surgery and she dies right there on the operating table. So she's lying there, dead, for about 3 minutes. And the doctors, they know what to do. They electrocute her back to consciousness. And she's alive again. But she's not better. Because later doctors diagnose her with a brain tumor, a really bad one. And they only give her 4 months to live. So Bull does chemotherapy, she does radiation, but unfortunately nothing beats this cancer. So she starts to take a different route. Alternative medicines. And she starts getting better and her cancer starts to stabilize. And she ends up living way past the 4-month mark. Until Bull decides to share her story on Instagram. And she starts pushing the alternative cures that helped her. And things really take off for her. I mean, people love her. Her Instagram blows up. She gets lots of fans, tons of support. She creates a wellness app. And the app is so popular, Apple wants to partner with her and make it available on the Apple Watch. She creates a cookbook. She raises a bunch of money and donates it to charity. Things are going really well for her. Until Bull gets more cancer. Not only does she have it in her brain, she has it in her blood, her spleen, her liver, all kinds of places. Oh, but it's not over for Bull. During her rise to fame, she's posting more, she's giving more interviews, and she starts to claim that all of her cancer and health issues started back when she got the HPV vaccine. Basically saying a cancer vaccine ended up giving her cancer. Huh? And this immediately makes a lot of people skeptical. And that skepticism grew, and it grew, and it grew, and then journalists started to investigate her. Then, all of a sudden, boom, Bull makes front page news. 5 charities she claimed she had donated to never got the money. 4 of those charities didn't even know she was supposed to be raising money for them. So then where did all that money go? So that news about the charities just opens the floodgates. And suddenly every journalist in Australia is digging into her past, trying to see if she lied about anything else. Like, did she really die for 3 minutes during heart surgery? Did she really have all kinds of cancer in a bunch of places? And did her alternative treatments really help that cancer? And then all of a sudden, her social media, where she was once loved, was now filled with nothing but hate. And poor Bull, she doesn't know what to do. She's removing comments, she's deleting her own posts that reference the cancer. Then it comes out that she spent that missing charity money on herself. Leasing a luxury car, vacations, clothes, new veneers, and people are pissed because they were lied to. Then Apple removes her app from the App Store, and the book publisher withdraws her book from sale. And during all this chaos, Bull is like, okay, I can fix this. I just have to do an interview. So she sits down to do an interview with the Australian Women's Weekly. And it goes about as well as you would expect. I mean, pretty quickly, the interviewer asks her if she has or has ever had cancer. And to everyone's surprise, Bull doesn't lie. She actually says, quote, no, none of it is true. So why did she say she had cancer when she clearly didn't? Well, in a later interview, Bull actually claims that her doctor had tricked her into believing she had cancer. And of course, journalists look into this, and it turns out that doctor doesn't exist. So that was also a lie. Now, eventually, the Australian government, they investigate all this, and they end up fining Bull like $410,000 for making false claims about donations to charity. Then she doesn't show up to any of her court dates, she doesn't pay any of her fines, and eventually police have to come raid her house and seize items to pay fines. A year later, the fines still weren't paid off, and they raided her house again. And all this happened in Melbourne, Australia, so shout out to Australia. So this British Instagram model, let's call him Pikachu. Now, Pikachu is living the big influencer lifestyle. He's traveling all over the world, Greece, Los Angeles. He's always got the newest drip, like wearing that, and whatever that is. And people are like, wow, how can he afford all this? Dude must be really successful. Regardless, he's living a great life. Until one day, Pikachu takes a little trip to Peru for a little vacation. He hits up Cusco, Lima, Machu Picchu, and when his trip is over, he goes to the airport to leave back to London. And he's checking into his flight, and two officers approach him, and they want to talk to him. But allegedly, Pikachu's Spanish isn't that good, so he's confused. So the two officers, they take him into a room, and they make him sit down. And they have his suitcase, and they take all of his stuff out of it. And this officer starts like tearing the suitcase up, and he runs some quick tests, and that's when they find a substance. And Pikachu, he's so confused. He's like, a substance? It doesn't look like he knows what's going on. And then the officer rips up the suitcase even more. And that's when they find a secret compartment. And in that compartment, $375,000 worth of cocaine. So how did Pikachu afford that big influencer lifestyle? All those trips around the world, the clothes, all that stuff? Turns out he's secretly a drug mule. And for a trip like this, mules usually get paid around $6,000 to $7,000. So that's probably what he was going to get paid. And to his credit, when he finally does get caught, he does his best surprise Pikachu face. Oh, how did that get in there? And because the Peruvian system moves fast, within the next 24 hours, they arrest him, he has a full trial, he pleads guilty, and they sentence him to nearly 7 years in Peruvian prison. And that is not going to be fun. Shout out to Peru. So this TikToker was so toxic, his mom had to intervene. So this guy makes a collection of TikToks saying a bunch of incel things like,
Great. Those will always deserve to be for rejecting nice guys like me.
So the grape obviously represents something I can't say on this platform, but you get the idea. So he says all this, and he does not feel bad about it.
If you're expecting an apology for what they said about this, you're not getting one.
By the way, this guy's from Georgia, so shout out to Georgia. Anyway, his videos were so extreme, they blew up, and the comments were just destroying him. You incel! What the hell is wrong with this guy? How does he look 17 and 39 at the same time? And he starts getting all this attention, and then TikTok bans his account. And, good for them. But here's something I've never seen before. The guy's mom caught onto his videos, and she decides to make a video of her own in response.
I told her multiple times that you have mommy issues. Me, I'm the mom. No one deserves to be talked to any kind of way. No one deserves to be mistreated, threatened, feel unsafe, or anything like that because of his issues.
And, she actually makes a compelling video with quite a few nuggets of wisdom in there. And I gotta say, it had to take a lot of strength to publicly distance herself from her son's behavior like that. But if you're a parent in that situation, what do you even do? I mean, the guy's technically an adult. She can only control him so much. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that was rough, but it feels like she did the right thing. So this woman in Florida was arrested while buying flowers from a street vendor. Police in Bonita Springs caught her giving money to a flower woman on the side of the road and they arrested her.
I just want to give this $20. I just want to give this $20. Please send this to me. My phone number is 813.
And of course, the video blows up and the internet is pissed. This is ridiculous. Oh, come on now. You can't even buy flowers anymore? First of all, this happened in Bonita Springs, Florida, so shout out to Florida. So apparently in that area, it's not actually a crime to buy from a street vendor, but it is a crime to stop your car to do so. Here's the craziest part though. She wasn't actually arrested for any of those things. She wasn't charged with buying flowers or obstructing traffic. She was charged with resisting an officer without violence and failing to obey the police. So after the video blew up and everyone got mad, the Bonita Springs Sheriff's Office had to defend themselves. They posted a long reply about it on their Facebook page, basically explaining the arrested woman refused to move her car out of traffic when they asked her to do so. If that's true, it feels like, I don't know, maybe the woman should have been fined and not arrested?
Sort of an extreme reaction.
These people get trapped in an elevator and they have no cell reception. So they use the call button to call the building concierge. But the concierge refuses to call the fire department.
You guys refuse to call the fire department because you will say Monday. Is that the case?
The procedure is for the security on site to do that, but I want them to know.
Yeah, but call the fire department. It's emergency.
So they're stuck in this elevator for an hour and a half. They were apparently in there so long that the woman who was in there with them is about to pass out. So they start begging.
We have a woman that's about to pass out. What's not the emergency?
I need to get out, please, please, please.
But the concierge still refuses to call the fire department to let him out, saying, just wait on our technician.
The fire department will also wait on the technicians as well.
So why is she refusing to call the fire department? So apparently the fire department will fine the building if they have to come out too many times for things like elevator problems.
You're not calling it because it costs $10,000 to get fire department there. It's a way to save money.
So a lot of these buildings will do everything they can to avoid calling them. And people want to call the fire department because, firemen get there fast. And as part of the fire code, they have access to the elevator room and they have elevator keys to like every operational elevator in the city. So when the concierge said firemen wait for the technician,
The fire department will also wait on the technicians as well.
hell no, they don't. Firemen don't wait for anybody. Fire department will cut your damn front door open just to get you out. Those guys don't play around. So eventually, you can guess what happened. The woman passed out, or maybe she's taking a nap. I don't know. The footage doesn't actually specify. But the concierge never called the fire department, and the people trapped in the elevator had to wait an hour and a half for the building maintenance guy to show up and let them out. I'm going to take a wild guess here and say that that building is getting sued. All right, this story is going to make you mad. So this turd, who has a kid with him, by the way, releases a live rat in McDonald's.
Let me hold it. Let me hold it.
This was in Newark, New Jersey, by the way, so shout out to Jersey. First of all, let me just say, these people are definitely overreacting to this rat.
Well,
I mean, it's McDonald's. They really freak out if they saw all the rats that are probably in the kitchen. Seriously, I bet it's fucking fast food ratatouille back there. All right, but anyway, let's take a look at this particular rat. The fact that it's a nice clean white and the container that he brought it in leads me to believe he just bought this at a pet store just for this prank. It's a domesticated rat. It's probably scared out of its mind and definitely won't survive long outside of a cage. Also, the kid saying, "Let me hold it," just breaks my fucking heart. I mean, come on, this kid had no idea what was going to happen. He probably thought he just got a new pet. I mean, why do people drag their kids into this nonsense? Seriously, even if you're going to pull some awful internet prank, there is no reason for that kid to be there. And I'm 99% sure this prank is illegal for all kinds of reasons. Mistreatment of animals, inciting a riot, probably. But mostly, this is shitty because of how he's treating the animal and treating the kid. But most surprisingly, this was actually not a TikTok thing. This blew up on Facebook back in 2019. Yeah, Facebook. You remember Facebook? And since this happened so long ago, I searched everywhere for an update, and I'm not trying to ruin your day, but I don't think they caught this loser.
Another day ruined.
You want to see a bunch of people get scammed? So this is at some church. Apparently this faith healer claims she healed this kid's autism.
And I detach him from autism and every diagnosis put upon him. And I declare on three, every spirit attached to which she renounced, every spirit of autism and mental sickness must leave in Jesus' name. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, Irene. What just happened? I don't know what just happened.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say with 100% certainty, nothing was cured.
This is such a crock of sh.
Also, you can't cure autism because it's not an illness. But still, everyone in the audience applauds like, yes, Jesus set you free, honey. Meanwhile, Jesus is just standing in the back like, nah, bro, I just got here. If I was in that crowd, I would have been like, oh my God, you passed his autism to me. Now I got it. Everybody panic! So who is this grifter pretending to cure autism? Well, her name is Apostle Catherine Crick. And who the calls themselves apostle? Like, I'm just going to start calling myself prophet. I am Prophet Ray now. But this scam artist has a YouTube channel where she has 500,000 subscribers where she like fake heals all kinds of illnesses. But my favorite video of hers is this. Woman with brain tumor is healed live on Instagram.
That's Jesus who delivered you and healed you.
So she's claiming she healed a brain tumor through a live stream, which is crazy because like you don't even have to be in the same room with her. You can just FaceTime her and Jesus will like heal you. I guess as long as you have good Wi-Fi, because I guess Jesus isn't strong enough to send his healing powers through bad internet service. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Ray, since she has this divine superpowers to cure things like autism, she's doing all these healings for free, right? Like out of the kindness of her heart? Well, let's see. We'll see. She has a cult website. I'm sorry, church website. But if you go to her website, she's selling, of course, lots of sick merch, bro. You know, capitalism just like the good Lord intended. And of course, the biggest button in this row of buttons is the one asking you to donate. Because of course, that's the biggest button. And look at that. You can set this whole thing up as a recurring payment. Wow. So you can literally subscribe monthly to this scam. This is like the Netflix of grifting. Oh, and of course, so you see here, they're a verified nonprofit. Look at that. I mean, why would anyone expect them to pay taxes on this kind of fraud? Now, I don't mean to be rude here, but madam, you can't cure autism or brain tumors just by touching someone, and you sure as hell can't do it through Instagram Live. So, with little due respect, take your scams and get the hell off my internet. TikTok pranksters.
Today, I'm gonna take a f***ing sh**.
It's got me now! It's got me now! It's got me now! Okay, to be fair, this is how most of us feel after Chipotle. Now, this definitely isn't the worst prank I've seen. Like, it actually got a chuckle out of me. Not a full-blown guffaw, but, you know, a chuckle. Okay, but here's my problem with it. Eventually, the Chipotle employees have to stop doing the job that they're doing, and they have to go find him in the bathroom and escort his ass out.
I had a bad stomach ache. And
I'm sure that's all part of his plan, to capture them on camera doing that. But these minimum wage employees don't necessarily want to be part of your TikTok prank. That's not what they're there for. That's not what they're at work to do. They didn't ask to be on camera, and it might even be humiliating for them on some level. So, I don't know, kind of a funny prank, but I wouldn't do it. It's shitty. No pun intended. By the way, these restaurants should start adding... What are some TV villains that are so good you want to just punch them in the face, but you can't because, you know, they're really just actors? Here's my list. First up, we have Umbridge from Harry Potter. I hate Umbridge so much, she should have been the main villain instead of Voldemort. I will die on that hill. Like, every scene she's in, just her face just sucks. The character, not the actor.
You deserve to be punished.
Next up, we have Samuel L. Jackson's character from Django Unchained. Samuel L. Jackson nailed this role. Like, he was such a narc, such a traitor. I hate him. It was so satisfying watching this character die. Joffrey from Game of Thrones. First of all, Joffrey. Second of all, Joffrey. And also, Joffrey. I hate him.
I'm telling mother.
Nate from from Euphoria. Nate is such a turd of a human being. And honorable mention, Nate's dad, also a turd of a human being. Both actors did phenomenal in this show. Because I hate him!
I know.
Homelander from The Boys. This cocky son of a... He makes me so angry, but I don't want him to die, because I want him to come back in the next season so that I can feel angry again. I legitimately enjoy hating Homelander. I really do.
This must be some kind of a joke.
Also, Stormfront from The Boys. Like, I hate Stormfront so much. Like, she's probably the most charismatic you'll ever see on TV. I lose sleep at night over how much I hate Stormfront.
I like to see the light go out.
And last but not least, Negan. They made Negan so perfectly hateable. Like, just his smile and his face. Then they went and tried to give him like a redemption arc. Like, I can't like him now. I hate him too. You made him too hateable. Okay, tell me, what the hell is this? This is art, bro. You wouldn't get it. This is deep. What kind of liberal arts degree taxpayer-funded bulls is this? This is like putting Han Solo in carbonite, but like with no budget. And this is not even original. I swear they did this in one of the Blade movies. And what happens if you fart in there? Does the whole thing inflate like a bag of barbecue Lays? All right, so how do these people breathe in there? Well, actually, it looks like they got two tubes going on, one for them to breathe and another one to keep the bag vacuum sealed. I don't know. I'm kind of a big fan of breathing. I don't think I'd want to take that away from myself. So this video is just for the men, like just for my bros. So if you're not a man, you don't have to watch this. All right, guys, what are some things that are considered feminine that you really enjoy doing? Here's my list. Taking a bubble bath. Motherfucker, bubble baths are so underrated. Every now and then you will catch my fat ass in a bubble bath like a gangster. Like that's something gangsters do. But in years. But I used to have a girlfriend who would practice manicures on me and she would like give me hand massages afterwards. Oh, and it looked good on me too with that clear nail polish. I was like, ooh, drinking a fruity cocktail. I don't give a damn. Give me the fruitiest of the fruity cocktails. Every now and then you just want some fruit in your mouth. Like give me the gayest, like least heterosexual cocktail you can think of, like a coconut daiquiri with a big dick hanging out of it. I will drink the hell out of that. Watching kitten videos. Like if you don't enjoy watching kitten videos because you know, bro, it's because I'm so alpha. Bullshit. It's because you're so sociopath. Kitten videos are amazing. Same with puppy videos. Get out of here, you monster. Sitting down to pee. Any man who says they've never sat down to pee is a lying liar. Like sometimes in the middle of the night, or like even if you're just too tired to stand, it feels good. No, I'll say, sitting down to pee slaps. Having scented candles around your house. Why is this even a masculine-feminine debate? There is nothing wrong with giving your place of residence a nice floral odor. Man, your house probably smells like turds and feet anyway. Why not just light a candle? How could someone own one of these? Hey, what the hell is that? This whole thing is a show. That is disgusting. Can you imagine what color that would turn after a short while? Like a reddish, yellowish brown? It's like when you leave spaghetti in the Tupperware for too long. Someone said this is probably Cinderella's toilet. I can't. It's too funny. Okay, the only way I will accept the existence of this toilet is if it's for educational purposes. Like to show kids in a science class how the inner workings of a toilet function or something like that. Otherwise, this is fucking weird. Okay, things that used to be respected and now they aren't. Kanye. We all used to love Kanye. What the hell happened to Kanye? Facebook. Believe it or not, Facebook used to be like prestigious. Like back when it was reserved for college students only. Now everyone's crusty old aunt uses it to share cringy ass memes. Flying in an airplane. Motherfuckers used to put on a whole ass business suit before they got on a flight. Now we got stuff like Spirit Airlines, which is like the Waffle House of the sky. The History Channel. I mean, they used to teach actual history on that channel. Now it's all conspiracy theory bullshit and aliens. The same thing could be said for TLC and MTV. Ugh, hate it. Elon Musk. People used to say this guy was the real-life Tony Stark. Now he's just kind of a turd. The Guinness Book of World Records. The Guinness Book used to be like world's tallest woman, world's fastest man. Now it's stuff like most number of candles extinguished by fart reporting, which is an actual Guinness record, by the way. Journalism. I mean, there's still good journalists out there, but it feels like it's all just clickbait now. The United States. I know my fellow Americans don't want to hear this, but we used to be admired around the world. Now we're largely seen as an example of what not to do. Like, ask someone who's not from here how they see the United States. Like, it's upsetting.
If you could tell me how expensive you think calling an ambulance out in America. $100? $200? $2.5 grand.
So this is going to make some people mad, but these are some things we need to stop putting on our cars. Okay, first up, we have the decal of Calvin peeing. I mean, these are just tacky. Plus, he's like a little kid. Like, ugh. Any sticker or decal with a politician's name on it. I hate to say it, but if you have a politician's name anywhere on your car, you got suckered. Our social media info. I might have to follow some of these people just to tell them they're a turd. Any kind of giant flag. What the hell? What are you, in the color guard? A big ass flag for those stickers that say my kid beat up your honor student. Yeah, that's solid parenting there. It should really say my kid's an idiot, so I taught him to be violent. Those special headlights that are blinding as if you have these on your car, everyone hates you. Any kind of sound system I can hear while I'm in my house. If I can hear your music outside and it's louder than my TV inside, it's too damn loud. Also, your favorite rapper sucks. Those like stickers with the anime girls on them. Yeah, these are harmless, but they're pretty cringy. How bad do you want to own one of these? Yeah, great. For all the times you've wanted to watch Jeopardy outside. All right, there are 3 reasons why I think this would fail. All right, 1, your HOA would never approve this. I gotta get approval before I plant petunias in my lawn, and the HOA is supposed to approve a 144-inch TV in my backyard? 2, I don't want my neighbors knowing what I watch. Oh, look at that, honey. He's watching MILFs again. And 3, wouldn't the heat just bake that TV, or the cold, or the rain, or any kind of weather? Wouldn't that mess it up? So how much does this monstrosity cost? Well, it comes in at a whopping $298,000 plus installation. For $298,000, that thing needs to come out of the ground like a switchblade. Okay, songs that would play on repeat in hell. First up, we have Baby Shark. Just punch me right in the face. I know this song is for kids, but it is absolute torture for me. Imagine by Gal Gadot and other out-of-touch celebrities. Like, I can never unsee that first time she sings Imagine. Imagine there's Scuttlebutt from The New Little Mermaid. Like, I like everyone involved in this, but this song is still really grating. That Mariah Carey Christmas song. This song isn't poorly written or anything, but if you don't hate this song, then you've never worked retail. Dookie Fresh by Your Favorite Martian. All right, look, we all agree that the guy who wrote this song is an absolute genius. But sometimes it feels like he's trying to troll his audience. All-Star by Smash Mouth. Not a bad song, just overplayed. The song Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney did together, Girl Is Mine. 2 of the greatest songwriters in the world come together and give us Girl Is Mine. I mean, maybe this wasn't hell-worthy, but it was definitely disappointing. Whatever that one song was that Jake Paul did. No, this song is definitely hell-worthy, but I will be the first to admit I am very jealous of those views. It's every day, bro. Gucci Gang by Lil Pump. Damn it, stop telling me this song slaps. It does not slap. Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang. It does whatever the opposite of slaps is. It hugs. This song hugs. Okay, watch this. This McDonald's ad from India is my favorite McDonald's ad from India.
A lot can happen at 179.
Yeah, a lot can happen at 179. I don't know, it feels like McDonald's is saying you can date our employees for only 179 rupees. I mean, that's literally what the tagline says. Come on, Indian McDonald's, you can't pimp out your employees like that. I mean, the tagline may as well have said, get all up in her McMuffin. Giggity. 179 rupees. 179 rupees is a little over $2 US, by the way. Also, let's be realistic. If a guy gets in line for McDonald's that many times a day, I feel like he'd be a little heavier. Supersize me. Imagine you walk into a gym and you see this guy. is not the way bench press works. I mean, look at that. This dude can fart on his own neck. I throw my back out if I like yawn crooked, and this guy can do this?
I am impressed.
So I had to look this guy up. His name is and he's a Russian contortionist in Cirque du Soleil. But hey, man, good for him for making a career out of that. He seems like a really good guy. He seems like the kind of guy that would bend over backwards for you. Boo! What are restaurants even doing anymore? I hate the job. Okay, but like, why? Honestly, I couldn't find a lot of information on this. I'm not sure if it's like a themed restaurant or like a pool wedding reception. But this is a terrible idea. Like, what if you drop your phone? And is the waiter like, would you like a refill of water? And then he just bends down and gets you some. Come on, man, don't be eating in the pool. I pee in there. I'm just glad this is in Italy, because if this were like Florida, there'd be like stuff floating in the water. Things people think are dangerous that really aren't. Number 5, the Bermuda Triangle. I was so scared of the Bermuda Triangle as a kid, even though I lived thousands of miles away in Oklahoma, but it's not more dangerous than any other part of the ocean. Number 4, flying. There's very little risk in flying, unless you fly Spirit, then you risk getting an ass whooping. Number 3, sharks. Statistically, sharks aren't really all that dangerous. Like, they don't kill a lot of people. Like, would we get that idea from Jaws? I don't know. I swear it's a lie propagated by Big Dolphin. Like, the amount of humans in the world killed by sharks every year is like 5. Like, in the entire world. Number 2, Halloween candy. Like, every year, the local news is like panicking that some psychopath is going to put, I don't know, drag shows in your Halloween candy. It doesn't happen. Like, there's all this crazy stuff going on in the world, but these people are worried someone's going to poison their candy corn. And number 1, turning the dome light on in your car while driving. Did everyone's parents decide to get together and lie to us about this? They said it was illegal to turn this on while you're driving. They said it was dangerous to turn this on while you're driving. That is nonsense. Bunch of liars. Things that movies always get wrong. Okay, first we have crawling around in air conditioning vents. Most air conditioning vents aren't big enough to crawl around in. And if you did crawl in one, you'd come out looking like Pigpen because they're filthy. Like, when's the last time you cleaned your air conditioning vent? Silencers. You know that sound in movies that silencers make? Well, that sound is bull. Like, in real life, even with a silencer, guns are loud as fuck. Carry someone who's unconscious. Dead weight is freaking heavy. Like, have you ever tried to carry someone who's drunk and passed out? Like, you can't do it. Like, you have to basically drag them. Oh, but in the movies, we'll carry people with no problem. Jumping through glass. In the real world, if you jump through a pane of glass, it will slice you up. You'd have shards of glass in your eyes and in your nose. Not to mention, you would land on a pile of broken glass. Bad news, don't do it. Getting hit in the head and then just blacking out for a short period of time and waking up with no problem. Yeah, in the real world, that's called head trauma. When someone gets hit hard enough to black out, like, sometimes they lose the ability to speak. Sometimes they gotta go into physical therapy for like months. Hacking. Don't even get me started on hacking.
I'm getting hacked.
Oh, this is not good. We're using our connection to the infestated.
Things I would ban if I had the power. Number 10, most prank YouTubers. Not all of them, but most of them. Number 9, child beauty pageants. Why? Why do these exist? Who are they even for? Jared from Subway? Number 8, pop-up ads. Man, I don't need these ads like popping up in my face all the time. I'm trying to watch these MILFs. Number 7, hidden fees. Cleaning fee, convenience fee. I stayed at a hotel that had a resort fee. Hell is a resort fee. Stop trying to trick me and just say the price up front. Number 6, Ticketmaster. I'll say this for the millionth time. Ticketmaster. 5, Congress's ability to trade stock. Why are they allowed to do this? It's shady as hell. 4, family vloggers. I'm sorry, but your kids aren't content. 3, the prosperity gospel. Yeah, that's just what Jesus wants, for you to have a Lambo. 2, single-ply toilet paper. Who is this even for? You're gonna have to fold it and double it anyway. Why not just make it 2-ply? And number 1, corporations owning single-family homes. I know this is not like a funny answer, but this one's just really f***ing up our housing market. Okay, movies that probably wouldn't get made today. First up, we have Dirty Dancing. She's 17, he's 25, he looks 35. Wouldn't get made today. The Toy. Rich white kid gets his dad to buy him a poor black man to be his play servant. Great movie, probably wouldn't get made today. American Pie. I mean, Jason Biggs secretly live streams the Euro Girl to the whole school without her consent, and Stifler's mom sleeping with her son's high school friend probably wouldn't get made today. White chicks. I mean, painting yourself like another race. It's a funny movie. I don't think it would get the green light today. Shallow Hal. I mean, this whole movie is just one big fat joke. Although in the end he learns to not be shallow, I think all the fat shaming would guarantee this would not get made today. Revenge of the Nerds. If you don't remember, there's a scene where our lovable protagonist is a woman. That scene alone would definitely keep it from getting made today. It's my nerd laugh. Big. A grown woman seduces and falls in love with an adolescent boy? Imagine pitching this idea to a room of Hollywood execs. Probably wouldn't get made today. Tropic Thunder. And yes, I 100% get what the Robert Downey Jr. blackface stuff was satirizing, and I think it's brilliant, but I still don't think it would get made today. Weird religions that people actually follow. First up, we have Matrixism, inspired, of course, by the Matrix movies. Last reported they had 1,500 followers. Jediism. So the Temple of the Jedi Order is actually registered in Texas, you know, where all Jedis are from. They were actually granted tax-exempt status in 2015. Dudeism, inspired by the Big Lebowski. The official name is Church of the Latter-day Dude, and they claim to have 450,000 ordained priests, which they call Dudist priests. The Church of Google. This one is more of an anti-religion. They believe that Google is the closest thing we have to a real god, since Google actually does know everything. Either way, I think the whole thing is satirical. Festivus, you know, from Seinfeld. So this one is more of a holiday than a religion, but a lot of people celebrate it. Scientology. Now, I don't want to say too much about Scientology because I might get... All right, you'll finally get to roast me for once. I got this app on my phone. It's a cheekbones filter. It's stupid. Look at it. I go from looking like this to this. And I hate it. I look like James Charles handsome Squidward. But tell me what I look like when I use that filter 10 times. Yes, I'm ugly. I don't let it bug me. Oversized head with a face like Gumby. Body like Play-Doh. I don't feel ashamed though. I don't give a damn because I still got game though.
Roast this fool.
This is why I no longer eat at other people's houses.
The life hack school never taught you. Do you have a problem with grease when you're cooking? Well, try this cooking hack and never deal with grease again. You're welcome.
What in the 5-minute crafts is going on here? Can't be putting feminine hygiene products in your meat, son. I don't even know what's real on the internet anymore. All I know is that is one expensive ass life hack. Aren't those things like $8 a box or something? Man, if only someone had invented some sort of absorbent towels made of paper, particularly on a roll. Weird conventions that are actually real. Lebowski Fest. Bunch of people get together and dress like Big Lebowski characters. Okay. The Redhead Festival. So this is where a bunch of redheads get together and, I don't know, get a sunburn. I don't know. I don't know what they do. SantaCon. This is where people meet up, dress like Santa, and they get drunk. That sounds fun. Event Haven Convention. This is a con for ventriloquists. No thank you. Those dummies are creepy. Merfest. This is where everyone dresses like mermaids and hangs out in pools. And if you don't want to dress like a mermaid, apparently they also allow pirates. I'm not making that up. Sunburst Celebrity Impersonators Convention. It's a convention for celebrity impersonators. I don't know, I'd have a beer with those guys. The National Hobo Convention in Iowa. This is where people get together, they're all dressed like hobos. This one feels a little insensitive, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, you're not going as a hobo again.
BrickCon. This is where Lego enthusiasts get together and show off their sick builds. Honestly, this one sounds pretty badass. Jobs that people just don't respect. So first up, we have paparazzi. Everyone hates paparazzi. It's basically legalized stalking. Rich megachurch preachers. The richest one is supposedly worth $760 million. Think about that. Spiritual mediums. I mean, anyone who charges you money to speak to your dead loved one is just awful. Whoever the hell invented robocalls, I hope you burn. I hope you burn. Life coaches who only make money by coaching other life coaches. I mean, look into this. This is basically a modern day MLM. Ticket scalpers. Ticket scalpers. And ticket master while we're at it. Misogynist podcasters. The teenage boys really love these. Like, haha, epic feminist gets owned. But no one else in the world respects them. Whoever the hell invented microtransactions in mobile games. Whoever you are the human equivalent of bedbugs. Social media influencers. We are just the worst. All right, did I miss any? I'm ugly, I don't let it bug me. Oversized head with a face like gummy, body like Play-Doh. I don't feel ashamed though. I don't give a damn. This is what the hell? Did she order a drink or an ass whooping? Seriously, it looks like he's trying to shake some sense into her. How does someone even invent a drink like that? So what do you have? Just treat me the way my dad used to. Yeah, I can do that. No, but she needs to chill or she's gonna spend the rest of the night like. Are you in the mood for some drama?
This is why you come to Miami for! This is why you come to Miami! This is why you come to Miami! What? You think I'm still acting your name tatted on me? I got your name tatted on me!
You gotta stop, alright? Relax. Nobody told you to get my name tatted on you. Now you look stupid with my name tatted on your back. Relax. Come inside. If he's not leaving you, you're not leaving either.
Oh, she wants both of them to get. What in the Jada Pinkett Smith is going on here? Oh, yeah. See, she called him a towel boy because he's wearing a towel. You see, you know, as funny as this video is, it's faker than those ads that say there's horny milfs in my area. I mean, there's way too much exposition happening here. In real situations like this, people are screaming half sentences. They're referencing people who aren't even in the room. You often come out of it needing more context. Also, you got all this drama going on, but the camera wants to point at the hotel security guard because they're trying to film his reaction because it's all staged, probably except for him. So yeah, it's fake. It's not a bad fake, but it's fake. Get your privileged ass away from that food truck. Okay, first of all, don't be adding extra syllables to words like that. Second of all, what did they expect to happen? Like they open the truck and the guy's like, oh, you got me. I guess I got to make your food now. Man, they're all acting like he was out of line. Girl, take your ass back to the Taylor Swift tribute concert or wherever you were at. But here's the craziest part. At no point did these ladies stop and consider that maybe they were in the wrong. Would you ever drive something this ridiculous? I'm ugly, I don't let it bug me. Oversized head with a face like gummy. Body like Play-Doh, I don't feel ashamed though. I don't give a damn cause I still got game now. Yes, I'm ugly. What the hell, man? It looks like he's driving with egg beaters on his car. Man, you can't put ridiculous hubcaps on your car and drive like an asshole. You need to pick one. Okay, I hate that I had to do research on this, but here's what this really is. This is apparently a Houston thing. These are called swangas, and the erratic driving is actually called swangin' and bangin'. Punch me in the face. And this is an actual trend, and I guess I'm just too old not to think this is really stupid. Things Americans think are normal, but the rest of the world thinks they're weird. Putting ice cubes in your water. Apparently, ice water is a very American thing. Entire aisles in the grocery store dedicated to just cereal. And we're fat. What do you expect? Tipping culture. Yeah, other countries got it figured out because our tipping culture is out of control. Big yellow school buses. Yeah, this is apparently uniquely American. In other countries, their buses are different colors. I don't know. Advertisements for prescription drugs on TV. I can't believe there's not a law against this. Ask your doctor if opiates is right for you. Worshipping politicians. Yeah, it gets really culty over here. I mean, case in point, forcing kids to pledge their allegiance to the flag every day. Like some countries do like an anthem, but they don't force kids to pledge to a flag every day. It's a little weird, I'm not gonna lie. Worshipping Pum Pum. Of course, it doesn't get much more American than worshipping the Pum Pum. Paying for an ambulance. Yeah, it's about $1 to $2 grand for a ride in this guy. Most expensive Uber ever. Worshipping the military. Yeah, other developed countries don't do this. Like I've seen people say thank you for your service. Suggest to anyone wearing a military uniform, no matter what they've done or haven't done. Like it's a little weird, I'm not gonna lie. It's a little bit weird. All right, did I miss any? So this guy walks up to this woman in a park and he compliments her dog.
Hello. You got a nice dog? Sorry? You got a nice dog?
But this guy ain't no decent guy. This guy is a YouTube prankster.
Oh no.
And he thinks it would be a funny prank to steal her dog.
Big guy, hold on, guys. We're outside. Welcome to the f***ing dog. We're outside every single time.
And in case you're wondering, yes, this is the same guy who did the prank where he walked into the stranger's house a few videos back. Same douchebag. And as I've said a million times, these pranks are just trash. Like, terrorizing people is not a prank. Like, I joke about influencers a lot, but this type of content is not what I want content creation to be, where everyone is just competing to see who could be the biggest asshole. Like, we already get enough of that in politics. But lucky for us, TikTok already banned his account. So hopefully we won't see any more of that guy.
Except when he goes directly to jail.
So this is just terrible. So these influencers here get this bright idea to walk into a stranger's house as a prank.
You mind coming? Just need to. Is this where the study group is? No. What door is this? No.
Okay, let's set aside how disrespectful this is for just a second. I sometimes exaggerate things for laughs, but no exaggeration, this could have easily ended in death. And I don't think the punishment for TikTok pranks should be death. Either way, don't walk into a stranger's house. And like, I don't know the laws in the UK, but I'm pretty sure this is illegal. Like, everywhere. You're pretty much just documenting a home invasion. And the guy sat on the family's couch? Get your stank ass off that couch. That's just awful. Yeah, don't do this. This is not a prank. This is just someone being an internet asshole. Like, how far are these pranks gonna go? Like, hey, look guys, I interrupted someone's heart surgery. We should make laws to stop this bullshit.
Sorry, I just seen you over here, and I just thought I had to stop and just ask you if I could get your phone number. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, bro. I didn't realize you were your husband. I thought you were like your gay best friend or something. I'm sorry. Yeah. You guys have a good day. I'm sorry. What's going on? It was just a joke, sir. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
You want us to call the cops?
For what?
You're harassing me.
Was it because of my shirt?
Dude, get out of here.
Hey, you can't.
Okay, I've said this a million times. If your goal is to provoke people so that they get upset, don't be surprised when they get upset and react. Like, it's no secret. Influencers like myself, we're like the lowest tier of society. But prank YouTubers, they're like the entertainment equivalent of AIDS. I mean, this couple is just trying to have a nice, drama-free day at the beach. And f***ing broccoli haircut here sets out to ruin that. Just for, what, a few clicks? But luckily for them, the police showed up ready to give us a happy ending.
You're both being trespassed from this apartment. You ever been trespassed before?
Yes.
Shocking.
Good. He said shocking. Then that cop didn't give a damn. He's seen it all before. But like, really, there should be legislation introduced or something that says prank YouTubers like this have zero legal protection from, you know, the occasional ass whooping. What are you supposed to do with a bed like this? Oh, yeah, okay, that's cool and all, but where is bro driving to? What, the kitchen to get a beer? Like, it's not like you could drive that thing out on the freeway. Or are we gonna see homeboy in his bed going through the Arby's drive-thru?
Can I take your order?
I'm not gonna lie, if I had kids and that bed, I would use it to run over my kids. That's f***ed up. You definitely don't want to get into a fight with this guy.
This is what tricking me. Come on, bro, I agree. Let's go right now. You like to fight? You like to fight? Let's go right now. I'm ready, bro. Let's go. You don't know what you're dealing with, bro. You don't know what you're dealing with.
Is he trying to fight, or did he just challenge everyone to a dance battle? Look at that. I think bro did an actual spin move. Can someone please make him a Mortal Kombat character?
Come on, bro, I agree.
See, I wouldn't normally be intimidated by him, but the leggings he's wearing make me fear for my life.
Your pants are so tight, you got frog eye.
Okay, old inventions that didn't quite catch on. Okay, so a mouthpiece that lets you smoke 2 cigarettes at once. What is that, 1 for each lung? I think people use these for weed now. A baby stroller to protect against gas attacks. What the f*** is this? Like, is the baby being slow cooked in there? I want to know who the hell is out here gassing babies. We have a revolver that takes a picture picture before a shot is fired. Oh, gee, I wonder why this one never caught on.
Check out my new camera.
We have a bicycle that fits the whole family plus a sewing machine. Is the sewing machine really necessary? Why does this look like it was invented by Dr. Seuss? And we have a device that lets you smoke in the rain. Why not just use a full-ass umbrella and keep your whole body dry?
Oh, that makes more sense.
What the hell is this trend?
And every time you make me cry, I love you a little bit more.
What the is wrong with people? Are they trying to break into the Ministry of Magic? Man, this ain't Harry Potter.
Bloody disgusting.
Like, I've seen some weird stuff on the internet, but like this, like you can see the marks in the bowl. The toilet's not even clean.
Tell me a bit of poo.
Like, I could live my entire life without a single part of my body touching that part of the toilet. But these two, they just dive right in. You are gonna hate this.
Let me say something. I have you put it back. There you go. Put it back. Go on, it's mine.
Can we not bring this trend back? When I think of social media bringing out our worst behavior, this is what I think of. Nobody wants your nasty mouth on their ice cream. No, nobody wants pre-licked ice cream. Not to mention you're damaging the customer confidence in the store, because like, who would want to shop there now? Remember that guy back in 2020 who filmed himself doing this? Well, he got 30 days in jail and 2 years probation, because like food tampering is a federal crime, even if it is for a TikTok trend. Imagine you go to a movie theater and you're interrupted by a group of people praying in tongues.
Okay, Father God, we do worship you, Father God. Yes, Father God. Yes, Father God. They don't know what's going on, Father God. Glorify your name, Father God. Yes, Father God. Thank you, Father God. Thank you, Father God.
So this is a tough one, because on one hand, you want people to be able to practice religion freely, but on the other hand, don't interrupt my damn movie. Like, I'm trying to watch Fast and Furious Part 19 or whatever, and people over here feeling the Holy Spirit. Even Jesus himself is probably like, hey, could you keep it down, bro? I'm trying to watch Mario. I'm just saying, just because it's prayer doesn't mean it's not rude and disruptive to the rest of the theater. Like, take it outside to the parking lot. Or, here's a crazy thought, maybe pray silently in your head. But don't dominate a private business with your religious showmanship. You want to know the worst sin being committed here? Is that they're making that minimum wage worker's job a lot harder than it needs to be. Yeah, just like the good Lord would have wanted, huh?
Holy crap, here comes Jesus, and he doesn't look too happy.
Have we gone too far? What the hell is this? Who is this for? Imagine being such a fat turd that you have to drink your milkshake through a cheeseburger. Do you drink your beer through a slice of Meat Lover's Pizza, you damn glutton? By the way, this isn't even American. This restaurant is in Colombia. They're trying to out-America America. I'd still eat it, though. I would eat the hell out of that.
Get in my belly!
Apparently, this guy lost his phone.
Yo, everybody listen up! I need my phone! Somebody took my phone! I'm gonna find my own phone, and my phone says it's in this building! Now, if I don't get my phone in 2 minutes, I'm gonna call the people, shut it off! I need my phone! Y'all never gonna be playing with me like that! Where's my phone?
Man, don't you hate it when you lose your phone and then you realize you've been holding it in your hand the whole time? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, he used that second phone to track his first phone. I mean, losing your phone sucks, but there's no reason to cause a scene at the Chinese buffet. Like someone's gonna suddenly just give it back. Oh, he seems really angry. We should give his phone back and turn ourselves in. Like these people over here are just trying to have some mushu chicken, and this dude's screaming about his phone.
Where's my phone?
Your temper brings us honor to my happy Mushu palace.
Sir, did you check the fortune cookies? Poor guy. I'd be mad too. This is why women live longer than men. All right, in case you missed it, let's see it again in slow motion. I assume it's at this point that they knew they f***ed up. Like, I don't even drive this bad in GTA, and these motherfuckers are here trying to fly to Hogwarts. All right, so you want to see what happened to the car?
I am in trouble.
Now, in the video, they say everyone is fine.
Everyone is fine.
But, you know, they destroyed a car. They could have killed a pedestrian. But think about the likes. Think about all the likes they got. You aren't ready for this one. I don't like anyone else. Damn it, TikTok, why? What the? I've seen Taliban beheading videos that are less appalling than this. But if I have to suffer through it, you do too. But look, if you're gonna get the body mod, you can't stop at like a ranch dipping bowl. You gotta make it into like an ashtray, maybe as a candle holder. And hell, it looks like a good place to put an infinity stone.
I am inevitable.
Okay, I want your thoughts on this one.
Can I have your banana to bring up for him? Huh? I need a banana to waste, so may I use that banana so I can charge you? Alright, I'm done.
So this one's interesting because the prank seems pretty harmless. I mean, it's a minor annoyance at worst. Like, I won't even get out of bed to react to it. But even so, I still side with the worker. Because she's at work, she's probably been on her feet all day, and yet they still filmed her and posted her reaction on the internet. And they didn't even blur out her face. I did that. I mean, yeah, these guys seem fairly harmless, but it still feels shitty to prank strangers while they're at work. So this guy's a real winner. I guess this is some internet prank where a dude goes to McDonald's and he asks to borrow a broom and he does this.
Boom! 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 Oh my God!
Just get off the internet. If harassing service workers is your whole act, then just pack up your likes and get off the internet. So the staff now has to drain that oil and the fryer and clean everything around it. Not to mention it's a huge fire hazard, and they don't deserve that. They're just trying to work their shift. Have fun making videos, sure, but don't be a McPrick. Imagine you're working your shift at McDonald's and this happens.
What do I do? No. Ricky! Help! Help! Oh my God, please!
Okay, first of all, he needs to take his ass to Waffle House with the rest of the wildlife. He's just here to see if the ice cream machine is broken. Newsflash, it is. And of course, this video wouldn't be complete without Bullwinkle here getting his head stuck in a Happy Meal, like straight out of a Winnie the Pooh reboot.
Kids, someone's got to get the Happy Meal off of his head, though.
Then you do it. You do it, hero. You go approach that wild animal. I wouldn't go anywhere near that moose. People are way too comfortable near wildlife. Why do people post their crimes on TikTok?
Eating free at Walmart.
Everyone, you should have seen it.
Oh, good. Teach the young kid to steal. That's a good start. And I'm sorry, but what the hell are those dots on that woman's face? Did she lose a fight with a stapler?
Take that and that.
She looks like she's about to motion capture a scene from Avatar. But here's the worst part. The stuff they're choosing to eat is bullshit. You could eat anything for free at a grocery store and you choose like Lunchables and Oreos. That's junk food. Steal some feta cheese, some fresh cut prosciutto. Have some class. I mean, come on, you want to be healthy when you go to prison. Don't harass the Lego employees.
The Lego group supports what? Well, the question is, why are you all in here with those pins on? Do you think children care about what man sucks at home? It's borderline pedophilia and child abuse for these weirdos to come in here and wear that.
What the hell? These guys aren't going to give you an intellectual debate. They're at work at Lego. They don't debate. They slang bricks. How do you go into a Lego store and you see all those amazing builds and your first thought is, suddenly I don't like gay guys. Of course the employees support LGBTQ. I mean, all minifigs are technically trans. You just got to swap out the hair. No, but my favorite part of this video is when he declares that he won't spend any more money at Lego.
I'll leave, and I won't spend any money at Lego.
Oh no, what will Lego do without your dozens of dollars? So this is going to make you mad. So this guy here is a paramedic, and he was caught stealing 60 pounds from a 94-year-old woman who had just collapsed. Damn, even paramedics are expecting a tip now? Wait, let me be clear about what happened. This 94-year-old woman collapsed in the yard. Someone called the paramedics, and instead of helping her, he goes into her house and robs her.
What is? No!
Bro, this ain't Skyrim. You can't just loot people's houses.
Why is me a thief?
And I love, like, right when he notices the camera, he's like, oh, shit, and then like, puts it back. No, I was just seeing if the money fit in my pocket. And it turns out it does. But the story does have a happy ending. So this video is from last year, and the guy actually got an 18-week prison sentence.
Don't drop the soap, big homie.
Imagine you have to be in a wheelchair, and some stranger accuses you of faking it.
Why are you in a wheelchair when I saw you get out of your car and walk? This person walked out of their vehicle and assembled their wheelchair.
I've never damaged my legs, sir. I can walk.
What is he, the freaking handicap police? Some people in wheelchairs can walk a little. Why would he even care?
How dare you roll around in a wheelchair while the rest of us have to stand up, taking all the good parking spaces.
Did you notice this part, though? When he got corrected, he immediately accepted defeat. And I will give him credit for that. I mean, at least he didn't continue to argue.
You're not disabled, prove it. Do a cartwheel.
Now, I've never been a fan of these internet pranks. Yeah, I know this prank seems harmless, but I kind of don't care. Like, the old man doesn't want to be part of a prank video, and so he shouldn't have to be.
Don't need to leave. All right, no problem.
What are you gonna do? Record it? Police report it?
I could if you want me to.
I'd like you to do it. Sue me.
I need your ID and I need your ID. You want to sue me for what?
Harassment, racial injury.
Okay, I doubt he'll get very far in a harassment lawsuit. It just doesn't seem worth anyone's time. But I'm glad the cops showed up to intervene, because something needs to be done about these public internet pranks. It's such behavior.
Dudes on the internet ain't everything, man. No, not at all. Like, and that's not even what we were after. We were just.
Okay, just to be 100% clear, that is definitely what they're after. Views is the goal. Let's not bullshit anyone. Are you a real man?
Your hands don't look like this while you're eating your lunch. You must be a liberal sissy. Must be a sissy boy.
Yeah, washing your hands is for women. In fact, all hygiene is just gay. And wiping your butt? Satanic. Real men flavor their biscuit with cement. Last time I ate a McMuffin, it was covered in motor oil. What the is this?
Everyone clap. You should have seen it. Everyone clap. Gotta believe it.
Wait, what the hell? What is that? Earwax? It looks like there's mosquitoes in there that could resurrect Jurassic Park.
So preoccupied with whether or not they could, they just don't think they should.
Dude went in the barber and said, "Barber, make it look like frozen root beer." So you want to see a porta potty get caught in a tornado?
Gotta believe it. Everyone clap. I swear it's true.
Damn, I hope no one was in there. That is a literal shitstorm. What the hell? It's like a low-budget Doctor Who. I guess you call that the Turdus.
Move this man.
So does everything in the porta potty then like rain down on all the people below? I definitely wouldn't stand there filming to find out. These people are the worst. So these douchey hockey player guys are at this college bar here, and in the corner down here off screen is a wheelchair. Now the owner of that wheelchair is a disabled woman, and she's in the bathroom. So first one of the guys puts his smelly ass in the chair, and then he starts scooting it around, and then, of course... Okay, this is garbage behavior. Wheelchairs are expensive. Like, sometimes really expensive. And how did the girl who owned the chair even get home? All right, but here's what's crazy. According to news reports, one of the guy's dads is GM of the Philadelphia Flyers? I don't know if that's relevant, but it's certainly interesting, and it makes him seem like a spoiled rich kid. So, how does this story end? Well, the university is investigating, and he did get suspended from his hockey team. So you're not going to believe this toilet. So this is a toilet on a Hungarian train, and I want you to take a closer look.
Everyone clap.
Oh, you mean it just falls out right on the... what if it's like crossing a bridge? Does it just all fall down? Is that why some tracks have that line of grass? It's because it's getting fertilized?
everywhere.
And do Hungarian Airlines have this same system?
Miles away.
Oh, but it gets worse. Trains in Thailand got the same system, but no toilet. There's just a hole in the floor. I feel like there could be some dude in there looking at you.
That's your penis.
Have people lost their damn minds? So this woman thinks Target is making little boys' clothes too feminine.
This is the boy section? Wow. Wow. Now, if this ain't pushing the agenda, I don't know what is. This is sick. Target, do better.
Ma'am, Target is not trying to make your kids gay. They're trying to make money. And most of these are just pastel. They're spring colors.
So hot right now.
And half these shirts got like dinosaurs and shit on them. She acts like they're selling shirts that say, oh, is it gay in here? Or is it just me?
Where'd you get that shirt?
I don't know. Came out of the closet.
Except for this thing. This is, I'm not gonna lie. I'd rock the hell out of this and steal your girl. Just don't do this.
Looking over stalls with my mannequin head till I get arrested, part 3.
Yeah, I know this is probably staged because breaking news, everything on the internet's fake.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
But can we stop filming in public bathrooms? And also don't mess with people while they're on the toilet. You probably scared the shit out of that guy. But here's the craziest part. They supposedly do all these pranks at Home Depot. I mean, have you seen some of the ex-con contractors who shop there? There is nowhere where you are more likely to get your ass whooped in the doorknob section than Home Depot. So this one's pretty crazy. So this video's a little old, but then again, so's your mother. You got a bunch of people who are allegedly looting an Amazon truck.
They're stealing the car. Okay, this is really scary.
Oh,
Oh my god. Oh my god, that lady's on the floor.
I didn't see that. I got
No.
They just pulled her down.
Man, this is why my orders are always late. And I feel bad for the driver. He's over there like, man, I don't get paid enough to give a Not that I care if Amazon loses money, but is this really worth the risk? Congratulations, you stole cleaning pads and 10 pounds of cat litter. Oops. Oh, you're not gonna believe this one.
Covering my parents' kitchen in peanut butter.
What the hell kind of prank is that? You better get some Wonder Bread and clean that up. This photo should legitimately be an ad for birth control. Like, this isn't even my kid, and All right, I've never said this before, but this is probably the worst thing we've ever seen. So this is apparently in China, and these are influencers, and they're live streaming the way you would on Twitch. But they're all here gaming the algorithm by streaming near a rich neighborhood. Something about how they show up more in rich people's search, and those rich people are more likely to tip them. And for some reason, VPNs don't seem to work for them, so they do this instead. This is the saddest dystopian Black Mirror book I've ever seen. Can't you just do fake pranks like a normal TikToker? Someone called it eye begging, which feels accurate. Is this the future we're headed toward? Is that gonna be me out there? Imagine walking out of your building and seeing influencers panhandling like this, and you gotta like shoo them away with a broom. This is the best cringe I've seen in a long time. So this DJ here is doing a set, but watch her hands. Let's play that back. Man, she's not a real DJ. Real DJs press play. She's pressing nothing. I don't even think the equipment's turned on. It's like when you give your little brother the controller that's not plugged in. But here's the craziest part. People still hire her as a DJ. Like, to this day, she still gets work. So then you have to ask, is this video even real? Well, look, there's a camera hovering around her. It looks like there's another guy filming over here. So she knows she's being filmed. So my guess is she's trolling us. All right, what do you think of this? I found a video of someone using lava, apparently, to cook an entire steak. What are they doing? This is like a hate crime. Hank Hill would be losing his mind right now. Whoa. Okay, yeah, it cooks, but you could cook spaghetti with a nuclear bomb. It doesn't mean you should. And what do you even call this? The Anakin Special? I mean, it's still better than Applebee's. Would you ever try something like this? See, this looks like a normal restaurant. Oh, but it's not.
Even when she's afraid about it.
Why though? How do you even review something like this on Yelp? Well, the breadsticks were good, but didn't have a floor. 2 stars. And what if you have to pee? You just go right there and there's people on the ground like, but here's the worst part. I was hoping it would be like a drop tower and in the middle of everyone's meal it would, but it's worse. I went to their website. The whole thing, you're just being held up by a crane. What would you do here? You're at the theater watching Avatar and these idiots show up. Oh, I would launch the entirety of the concession stand at them. Could I get some extra butter on this? I need to throw it at some people. I mean, we pay enough for a movie without Chief Queef and Jiz Khalifa ruining the experience for us. And the worst part is, if they're down there making a bunch of noise, how am I supposed to film the movie? You want to see some drama? Well, the good news is she's single now, if you're interested. I love that she hid her weapon and started crying right when the police showed up, just right on cue. How are you going to sit barefoot on his hood, bashing his window in with a hammer while claiming he has a mental illness? Anyway, I hope everyone is okay in this situation. I'm sure they'll get back together in like a week. You know how these things work. It finally happened. Someone did the thing that we all want to do when someone stands in a parking spot.
Find another parking spot. I already went around here. You really want to get in trouble? You're fucking crazy. I'm gonna tell them, so it's cool.
Okay, yeah, parking spot savers are the worst, but you can't just... And then definitely don't edit the video to include that ludicrous song. But really, are you going to risk it all for a parking spot at Walmart?